Chapter 23-28. Rewards. In the center of the island, Zhuowen stood in front of a stone pillar. This stone pillar was blood-red in color, and its surface was engraved with many patterns. It was at least 1,000 feet tall. Brother Zhuo, this stone pillar is the key to the second checkpoint. However, Brother Zhuo, you just fought with the Timelight Frog King, so it's best that you don't try the second stage yet. You can choose your reward first, Xiaolang said. Zhuowen nodded. He had consumed a lot of energy in the battle with the Time Frog King, and he had only recovered a little. Naturally, he couldn't rashly challenge the second stage. Zhuowen followed Xiaolang's instructions and stared at the blood-red imprint on the surface of the stone pillar. Soon after, two blood-red rays of light shot out from the blood-red imprint and were reflected in Zhuowen's eyes. Not long after, a secret chamber appeared at the bottom of the stone pillar. Zhuowen squinted his eyes and looked at the secret chamber. However, there was a force on the surface of the secret chamber and Zhuowen's spiritual consciousness could not penetrate it. Whoosh! Whoosh! Instantly, black shadows flew out of the secret pavilion and floated in front of Zhuowen. Zhuowen looked at the things in front of him with a strange expression. These black shadows were actually broken parts. Upon closer inspection, they were probably parts of a spacecraft. Furthermore, Zhuowen also sensed an extremely rich spacetime law aura from these parts. Furthermore, this aura was much richer than the spacetime sea. It's a part of the spacetime roulette. He actually gave out dozens of parts at once. It seems that Brother Zhuo's performance is really good this time. When Xiaolang and the other two saw the piles of components floating in front of Zhuowen, their eyes revealed shock and envy. One had to know that when they had just passed the first level, they had also received their rewards here. However, the three of them had only received fragmented parts, and they were very small in size. They could not be compared to any of the parts in front of Zhuowen. On the other hand, Zhuowen had obtained dozens of components in one go. How could the three of them not be moved? Spacetime roulette. Zhuowen murmured. He had heard of this item from Yarou Xiangjuan before. It was said to be the fastest flying divine artifact. However, it was later shattered by several mighty figures. Who would have thought that this fragment would actually fall here and be used as a reward? Brother Zhuo, the components of the spacetime roulette are good stuff. Naturally, they contain the laws of spacetime. If you can refine these components into a flying ship, its speed will definitely be unparalleled. Of course, if you can make it into a spacetime hollow, its speed will definitely be even faster. At the very least, most flying-type divine artifacts will not be able to compete with it, Xiaolang said with a smile. Zhuowen nodded and said in a deep voice, could it be that the rewards for the next stages are all related to the spacetime roulette? Xiaolang nodded and said, indeed. The most important one is the spacetime core. It is said that the spacetime core is in the third trial. Only if you perform well enough will you be able to obtain the spacetime core. Moreover, there are only two spacetime cores. As for whether they have been obtained by others, I do not know. Xiao Yin interrupted and said, regardless of whether you can obtain it or not, if you can't get out, wouldn't it be useless to obtain the spacetime core? Big Brother is right. No matter how precious the treasures are, what's the point of being trapped here? Are you going to wait for death while guarding a pile of treasures? The black-clothed man agreed. Xiaolang smiled and looked at Zhuowen with a burning gaze. He said, Brother Zhuo, little Brother Zhuo, you were able to comprehend the laws of spacetime and kill the spacetime Frog King. From this, it can be seen that you are not ordinary. Perhaps you can successfully pass through the third trial. You should know that the spacetime Frog King's strength is about the same as the second trial's guardian. Zhuowen understood what Xiaolang meant. The spacetime Frog King would not normally appear. Once it did, it would definitely be a disaster for the cultivators on the island. Its strength was also about the same as the second trial's guardian. Since he was able to kill the spacetime Frog King, he would naturally be able to deal with the second trial's guardian. Xiao Yin and Xiao Fu's eyes also revealed a fervent look. They had been waiting for a powerful monster to appear and completely break through this trial ground. That way, they would have hope of being rescued. As for the white-clothed young man before them, it was clear that they had high hopes for him. Do the three of you want to follow me to the second trial? Zhuowen asked Xiao Lang's team of three. The second trial was more humane. As long as they were not killed, they would be able to retreat and their lives would not be in danger. Additionally, Xiao Lang's team of three were not bad people. Zhuowen had a good impression of them. Thus, he was willing to bring them to the second trial. Of course, Zhuowen had another purpose, and that was that the number of cultivators at the second checkpoint shouldn't be too small, and there should be people that Xiao Lang and the others were familiar with. When the time came for him to enter, he would be able to save some breath. Brother Zhuo, you are willing to bring us along? Xiao Lang's eyes were filled with excitement. However, they quickly dimmed and he said solemnly, Brother Zhuo, I fear that is not appropriate. The difficulty of this trial increases according to the number of people. The more people there are, the more difficult it will be. Back then, there were quite a number of cultivators on the island. We had joined forces to break through, but we suffered heavy casualties. Hearing this, Zhuowen frowned slightly. It seemed that the person who set up the trial had already thought of this situation. It doesn't matter. We can give it a try first. If it doesn't work, we can retreat at that time, Zhuowen said. Xiao Lang's team of three looked at each other and saw the excitement in each other's eyes. Although they were quite worried that the difficulty of the trial would increase, they believed in Zhuowen's strength more. Brother Zhuo, regardless of whether you can bring us through the second trial this time, the three of us brothers are very grateful to you. Xiao Lang cupped his fists towards Zhuowen. Then, he took out a jade talisman from his bosom and handed it to Zhuowen. This is. Zhuowen took the jade talisman and asked in surprise. This jade talisman belongs to a friend of mine. He is a skilled weapon refiner. I saw that Brother Zhuo obtained a lot of parts of the spacetime roulette. It is completely possible to refine a small roulette. If Brother Zhuo can pass the second trial, then you can look for my friend. Of course, if this Xiao is lucky enough to pass the trial under the guidance of Brother Zhuo, this Xiao will personally bring Brother Zhuo to my friend, Xiao Lang laughed. Zhuowen was surprised. He did not expect Xiao Lang to have an weapon refiner friend. He could not help but ask, then, who is better at weapon refining, your friend or Quang Li of the Quicksand family? Xiao Lang sneered, Brother Zhuo, Quang Li's weapon refining level can only be said to be above average. That Quang Li can only act like a tyrant in the Gulan galaxy. In the entire Six Desires heavenly realm, his weapon refining level is nothing. But my friend is different. Even in the Six Desires heavenly domain, his armor-making skills are top-notch. Back then, the Six Desires Palace even wanted to invite my friend to be their royal armor-making grandmaster, with the same treatment as the law enforcement elder of the Six Desires Palace, but my friend refused. Zhuowen was shocked. If Xiao Lang's words were true, then this friend of his was really amazing. Generally, the law-enforcing elder of a sect was a person of high status and authority. The law-enforcing elder of a behemoth like the Six Desires Palace had the power to cover the sky with one hand. Chapter 23-29. Sam, thank you, Brother Xiao. Zhuowen cupped his hands in gratitude. Xiao Lang waved his hands repeatedly, saying that he didn't dare. Next, Zhuowen recuperated on the island. He hadn't fully recovered yet, so he planned to challenge the second checkpoint after he recovered. Moreover, Zhuowen also discovered that the spacetime rules on this island were easier to accept and comprehend. During the time he stayed on the island, he actually naturally understood many of the spacetime rules that had previously troubled him. Half a month later, Zhuowen had completely recovered. When Zhuowen walked out of the cave, he discovered that Xiao Lang and his two brothers were already waiting by the stone pillar. Brother Zhuo, as long as you place your hand on the stone pillar, will be teleported to the second checkpoint. Be careful at that time, Xiao Lang said solemnly. Zhuowen nodded and walked in front of the stone pillar. He stretched out his right hand and placed it on the surface of the stone pillar. Xiao Lang and his two brothers followed closely behind him. A blood-red light burst out from the stone pillar and enveloped the three people beside it. What appeared in front of Zhuowen was still a sea, but this sea was blood-red. However, it still contained a rich aura of the spacetime rules. Above the blood-red sea, there was a long white jade bridge. If one looked carefully, The end of the white jade bridge led to another island. This island was obviously different from the first one because this island was covered in white snow. At a glance, it was a beautiful scene of ice and snow. Zhuowen, Xiao Lang, and the other three stood at the other end of the white jade bridge. Brother Zhuo, you have to pay attention to the sea water. The blood-red color on the surface of the sea water is a terrifying creature. We've been here before, so we know how terrifying this blood-red color is. Xiao Lang pointed at the blood-red color under the bridge and said in a frightened voice. Zhuowen nodded. With a wave of his sleeve, he threw out 81 beast bone array discs and set up a powerful defensive array in an instant. Be careful and follow me closely. After Zhuowen finished speaking, he took a step forward and flew towards the white jade bridge. The 81 beast bone array discs were constantly revolving around Zhuowen. Waves of array fluctuations spread out, indicating that the beast bone array discs around him were unusual. Xiao Lang and the other two followed closely behind Zhuowen. All of them took out their respective divine artifacts and were secretly on guard against the blood-red color under the bridge. Along the way, it was exceptionally quiet under the white jade bridge. The surface of the sea was even more tranquil. However, the more it was like this, the more vigilant Zhuowen and the others became, and their footsteps became even faster. Rumble. The moment the four of them walked to the center of the white jade bridge, the surface of the sea under the bridge suddenly exploded. Then, waves of blood rushed out from the surface of the sea and gathered in the air, finally forming a strange human figure that was dozens of feet tall. This strange human figure was made up of blood. Its appearance was like mud, and from time to time, a red sticky substance would drip from its body. It looked exceptionally disgusting. The strange humanoid figure did not have clear facial features. The two bloody holes in its head were like two intelligent eyes. This is the Guardian. Zhuowen frowned slightly. He took a few steps back and turned to look at Xiao Lang and the other two. Xiao Lang and the other two's faces were deathly pale. Their eyes were filled with deep fear, and their lips trembled. Zhuowen realized that something was wrong and hurriedly asked, "What's wrong with you?" Xiao Lang calmed down. He took a deep breath and said with a trembling voice, "Brother Zhuo, we're in big trouble. The guardian of the second checkpoint is called Sam. This thing is a soft-bodied creature. Usually, it basically lives on the surface of the space-time sea. It floats on the surface of the sea and stains the sea water red. When the challengers come, Sam will condense a corporeal body to obstruct them. Sam has thousands of forms. They can generally be divided into three types: plant, animal, and human. Among them, the plant form is the weakest, while the human form is the strongest and most terrifying. Back when we were challenging this checkpoint, Sam only showed his plant form. After Xiao Lang said that, Xiao Yin continued, "Even if Sam was in his plant form, we were no match for him. Back then, when we formed a group of over 10 people to challenge this checkpoint, Sam only showed his animal form. His strength was extremely terrifying. 10 of us were killed, and only a few of us managed to escape. As for his human form, this is the first time I've seen it." Hearing that, Zhuowen nodded. He finally understood why Xiao Lang and the other two were so afraid of Sam. It turned out that Sam was so terrifying. Furthermore, he had shown an unprecedented human form. Sam's empty eyes did not look at Xiao Lang and the other two. Instead, they fell on Zhuowen. He said in a low voice, "Did you kill the Temporal Frog King?" Zhuowen was startled. Soon after, he said indifferently, "Yes." "So what?" "Haha, to be able to kill the Temporal Frog King, you're pretty good. However, I'll kill you." Although the Temporal Frog King and I weren't on good terms, we were still fellow sufferers trapped in the same place. Since you killed him, I have to avenge him. Otherwise, he would have died too unjustly. Sam's voice was hollow and hoarse. It sounded exceptionally ear-piercing. "I don't think the Temporal Frog King needs you to avenge him, because you'll be able to meet him very soon." Zhuowen pulled out the Emperor's sword and said in an indifferent voice. Sam grinned. "You're quite stubborn. I wonder how long you can be so stubborn." After saying that, Sam took a step with his right foot. Like a bolt of lightning, he disappeared from where he stood. By the time Sam reappeared, he was already within reach. Rumble. Sam clenched his right hand into a fist and slammed it in front of Zhuowen. Immediately, the 81 beast bone array discs around him burst out with violent ripples, resisting Sam's terrifying fist energy. Zhuowen's eyes narrowed as he looked at the beast bone array discs that were constantly trembling. Sam's strength was indeed extraordinary. With just a single punch, he was able to cause the defensive array set up by the beast bone array discs to tremble so much. Boom! Boom! Sam roared furiously, throwing out punch after punch like a madman. His punches were so fast that it was shocking. Every punch created a series of fist shadows. The fist shadows also contained extremely terrifying space-time rules. When he threw out a punch, space and time seemed to freeze. Xiao Lang and the other two were aghast. They trembled in fear and their legs went soft. They didn't dare to make a move. The three of you stay in the array. I'll go meet this Sam. Zhuowen glanced at the frightened Xiao Lang behind him. He knew that the three of them wouldn't be of any use, so he took a step forward and jumped out of the defensive array. Die! Sam's eyes were sharp and his hands were nimble. He suddenly punched out at an extremely fast speed, directly towards Zhuowen's chest. Chapter 2330. Human Form Rumble. The fist force collided with the sword force, causing a ring-shaped shockwave to erupt. Instantly, pillars of water shot out from the surface of the sea like raging dragons. The power of the laws of space-time spread out like a raging storm. On the other end of the White Jade Bridge, the faces of Xiao Lang and the other two, who were protected by the beast bone array disc, changed slightly as bitter smiles appeared at the corners of their mouths. The collision between Zhuowen and Sam was truly terrifying. Even though they were so far away, the shockwaves from the laws of space-time that spread out caused them to tremble in fear. Brother Zhuo has become stronger. His utilization of the laws of space-time is also much stronger than before. Xiao Lang could not help but sigh as a look of admiration appeared in his eyes. The trial grounds are meant to improve your comprehension of the laws of space-time. Back then, before we entered this trial grounds, we only had a smattering of knowledge of the laws of space-time. However, after entering the island of the first stage, our understanding of the laws of space-time improved considerably by relying on the laws of space-time within the island. As for Brother Zhuo, before entering the island, his grasp of the laws of space-time was already far above the three of us. After staying on the island for a while, it is only natural that he has a deeper understanding and utilization of the laws of space-time. A look of awe appeared in Xiao Yin's eyes. They knew that aside from the rewards, the most important thing about the island was that the laws of space-time within the island were gentler compared to the laws of the outside world, making it easier to comprehend. Generally speaking, cultivators who could enter the island would be able to gain a certain amount of benefits. The amount of benefits would depend on the cultivator's perception and talent. Xiao Lang and the other two knew that even if they stayed on the island for a long time, they would not be able to pass the second stage. However, Zhuowen was different. Before entering the island, he had killed the Temporal Frog King. Now that he had been baptized by the gentle laws of space-time within the island, it was only natural that his grasp of the laws of space-time would be even stronger. Boom! 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 The more Zhuowen and Sam fought, the more ferocious they became. Terrifying shockwaves spread out, causing the White Jade Bridge on the other end to shake violently. It was as though it would collapse at any moment. At the other end of the bridge, there were two cultivators sitting cross-legged. The two cultivators who were meditating suddenly opened their eyes as if they had sensed something. A tall and thin cultivator looked at the chubby cultivator opposite him and said, "Did you hear anything?" The slightly plump cultivator's gaze turned solemn as he noticed the White Jade Bridge in front of him. He said in a deep voice, "The bridge is shaking. Furthermore, I can sense an extremely powerful fluctuation of the space-time law in the distance. Someone is trying to break through there." The tall and skinny cultivator nodded. His eyes flickered as he said, "We have been guarding the bridge for hundreds of years under Ancestor Lu's orders. This is the first time we have seen the bridge shake so violently. Should we go over and take a look?" The fat cultivator frowned slightly and said with some hesitation, "Ancestor Lu has given orders before that we must not leave our posts without permission. Otherwise, we will have to bear the consequences." Do you intend to go against Ancestor Lu's orders? The thin and tall cultivator said disapprovingly, Ancestor Lu is in seclusion most of the time. How can he pay attention to small characters like us? We are just going to take a look, not to cause trouble. The slightly plump cultivator was tempted. In fact, he also wanted to go over and take a look. However, he recalled Ancestor Lu's orders and had some misgivings. Now that the tall and skinny cultivator had said this, his misgivings were greatly reduced. The slightly plump cultivator said with some concern, "All right, but we'd better go over quietly. If there is anything wrong, we'll immediately retreat. That Sam of the second trial is not to be trifled with." The tall and skinny cultivator chuckled and said, "Don't worry. Can't you see that the bridge is shaking so violently? That Sam must be fighting the challengers right now. I wonder what form Sam will use to fight." The lanky cultivator chuckled. The slightly plump cultivator said with interest, "I have only seen Sam's plant form and animal form. It is said that Sam has a final form, human form, but I have never seen it." The tall and skinny cultivator said with some trepidation, "That Sam is indeed terrifying. We were lucky and only encountered that guy's plant form, but even in that form, he almost killed us." The slightly plump cultivator said with some reverence, "You're right. Sam's animal form is very terrifying. However, I heard that when Ancestor Lu broke through the second trial, Sam's human form was also drawn out. Furthermore, Ancestor Lu smoothly passed through Sam's obstruction and successfully reached the second island." The tall and skinny cultivator shrugged and said, "Don't you know what kind of person Ancestor Lu is? He should be the most promising existence to enter the third island. I don't find it strange that he passed through Sam's obstruction in human form." The slightly plump cultivator nodded and agreed with the tall and skinny cultivator's words. On the second island, Ancestor Lu was the leader and the most powerful person on the island. There were almost no cultivators on the second island who dared to disobey Ancestor Lu. "We're almost there. The battle is over there." The tall and skinny cultivator suddenly stopped and stared ahead with vigilance. On the long bridge thousands of meters ahead, two figures were constantly fighting. The aftermath of the battle spread out and caused endless waves to rise on the sea below the bridge. It was an extremely terrifying scene. The tall and skinny cultivator's eyes narrowed and immediately noticed a blood-colored figure among the two fighting figures. He frowned and said, "That figure can't be Sam, right? This form. I have never seen it before." The slightly plump cultivator trembled and said, "Of course you haven't seen it before, because this is his human form. Oh my God, someone actually encountered Sam's human form, and even fought him to a standstill. Is this guy a freak?" The tall and skinny cultivator was taken aback and shock appeared in his eyes. He also saw Sam's human form and then his gaze fell on the white-clothed youth who was fighting Sam. Who is this person? He's so strong. With this kid's strength, he doesn't need to be entangled with Sam at all and can immediately pass through the bridge. The tall and skinny cultivator said in surprise. The slightly plump cultivator's gaze fell on Xiao Lang and the other two who were quite far behind the white-clothed youth and said in a deep voice, "This person brought 3 people here. If he wants to take them away, he must defeat or kill Sam. Otherwise, he won't be able to pass through the bridge at all." The tall and skinny cultivator reacted and also noticed Xiao Lang and the other two on the other side. He was speechless and said, "This person is too kind. With this strength, he can just pass by himself, but he still wants to take care of others. Isn't he asking for trouble? Although this kid is not weak, I don't think he can last long. Sam's human form is very terrifying and he hasn't used his ultimate move yet." Chapter 23:31. Difficult to deal with. Zhuowen's gaze became more and more solemn. Sam was really strong, even stronger than the Time Frog King. Ever since Zhuowen cultivated on the second island for a while, he naturally went through the baptism of the space-time law on the first island, which made his mastery of the space-time law even stronger. But now, he found it more difficult to deal with Sam than he did with the Time Frog King. This was something he didn't expect. The power of the waning sun over the sea was really terrifying. If Zhuowen used it now, he could seriously injure or even kill Sam. However, Zhuowen didn't feel particularly at ease with Xiao Lang and the other two. Moreover, during the battle just now, he also noticed the tall and thin cultivator and the slightly fat cultivator coming from the other side of the bridge. He knew that these two people were cultivators from the second island. Without knowing whether they were friends or foes, he really did not want to expose the son of waning life on the sea. After all, he would become extremely weak after using this son of waning life on the sea. Boom! Just as Zhuowen was pondering, Sam roared and suddenly punched out. The fist wind rushed over, followed by a thick, blood-red mucus that blasted in front of Zhuowen. Zhuowen flipped his left hand and summoned the phagocytosis, which blocked the mucus that splashed over. At the same time, the fist wind blasted over and smashed into the phagocytosis. Bang! Zhuowen groaned and was forced back by this huge force. His gaze became extremely gloomy. This Sam was really incredible. The more he fought, the stronger he became. Seeing Zhuowen being forced back, Sam roared and punched out again. This punch was powerful and heavy, carrying a terrifying power that could penetrate the heavens. Even Zhuowen's expression changed. Zhuowen spat out a mouthful of blood essence onto the phagocytosis and immediately activated the power of the Tao rhythm within the phagocytosis. At the same time, Zhuowen summoned the everlasting ice lotus and a terrifying cold energy bloomed like a lotus flower. The phagocytosis contained the heavenly Tao of the Tao fruit, and the ice lotus contained the ice essence. These two treasures were extremely rare in the outside world, so it was easy to imagine how terrifying their combined might would be. Rumble. As the fist energy blasted out, the surrounding air surged, filling the air with terrifying ripples. However, the combination of the phagocytosis and the everlasting ice lotus barely blocked this attack. Moreover, the extreme ice in the everlasting ice lotus froze all of Sam's attacks in place. At this moment, the torch dragon wings on Zhuowen's back suddenly unfolded. He took a step forward with his right foot and disappeared on the spot. The moment Zhuowen reappeared, a dense swordlight appeared and swept out. He had been waiting for Sam to make a mistake, and this was definitely his most powerful strike. Sam's expression changed slightly. He had been too careless. He didn't expect that Zhuowen would have such a precious treasure like the everlasting ice lotus. Although this freezing cold chi had only frozen his right fist for about a breath of time. Although the ice only froze his attack for a moment, it was enough for an expert like Zhuowen to send out hundreds and thousands of sword attacks. Poochie. When Sam's right fist finally broke free from the frozen state, the endless sword light rained down on Sam's body. Then, Sam's entire body was cut into 8 pieces, into countless small pieces. At the same time, Zhuowen waved his right hand, and the everlasting ice lotus floated above Sam. A terrifying cold energy swept out like a wave, freezing all the pieces of flesh. The moment the flesh was frozen, phagocytosis fell from the sky and smashed all the ice into powder. Zhuowen was still not satisfied. He bent the king's sword in his hand and swung it. Suddenly, with Zhuowen as the center, a terrifying spatial crack appeared. The shattered ice fell into the spatial crack and was completely annihilated. Zhuowen looked at the powder that disappeared into the spatial crack, and his gaze relaxed slightly. Before coming to this checkpoint, Xiao Lang had already told him about Sam's characteristics. He knew that Sam's vitality was very strong. If he couldn't get rid of him by the roots, Sam would basically be immortal. This was also the main reason why Zhuowen had used such a combo after seizing the opportunity. This guy is so strong. I'm afraid he's as strong as Ancestor Lu, right? The thin and tall cultivator said in shock. The fat cultivator frowned slightly and said in a deep voice, "That's not necessarily true. Ancestor Lu passed through here many years ago. Do you think Ancestor Lu hasn't taken a single step forward all these years? In my opinion, this kid is very strong, but there's still a gap between him and Ancestor Lu." The thin and tall cultivator nodded and didn't refute the fat cultivator's words. He knew that the fat cultivator had seen Ancestor Lu's battle and knew better than him how terrifying Ancestor Lu was. Since he said that Ancestor Lu was stronger than this kid, it should be true. However, what shocked the thin and tall cultivator was that the white-clothed youth in front of him was a newcomer who had just entered the second checkpoint, but he had already killed Sam. This strength definitely couldn't be underestimated, and his talent was definitely above Ancestor Lu's. As long as this kid was given time, it wouldn't be too big of a problem for him to surpass Ancestor Lu. Xiao Lang and the other two were ecstatic. They rushed to Zhuowen's side and asked about his well-being excitedly. Poochie. Suddenly, the thin and tall cultivator standing not far away spat out a mouthful of blood and then fell to the ground, spitting out blood from his mouth. Judy, what's wrong with you? The fat cultivator was startled and quickly pulled up the thin and tall cultivator and asked. Unfortunately, the thin and tall cultivator's eyes turned white and he lost consciousness. He just kept spitting out blood. The fat cultivator quickly let go of the thin and tall cultivator and couldn't help but retreat again and again, looking at the strange condition of the thin and tall cultivator with fear in his eyes. Could it be? The fat cultivator seemed to have thought of something and cold sweat kept flowing down his forehead. Then, he didn't dare to stay here any longer and left the place in a flash. What's wrong with that guy? Xiao Lang also noticed the strange condition of the thin and tall cultivator not far away and couldn't help but ask in surprise. You guys retreat first. Zhuowen looked at the thin and tall cultivator not far away, but his eyes were filled with bewilderment because he felt an extremely familiar and terrifying aura from the thin and tall cultivator. This aura was too similar to Sam's that he had just killed. Boom. After Xiao Lang and the other two retreated a few hundred meters, the thin and tall cultivator exploded. A bloody mist sprayed out and dyed the white jade bridge blood red. Then, the bloody mist began to condense and squirm, and in an instant, it formed a strange blood-colored human figure. And this blood-colored human figure was no stranger to Zhuowen. It was Sam. I was too careless. I didn't expect you to be hiding a trump card. But now, I won't be careless again. Today, you will die for me. Sam's resentful voice sounded, and then he rushed toward Zhuowen without caring about his own safety. Zhuowen's eyes were solemn. With a twist of his right wrist, the sword light turned into a huge dragon and rushed out, instantly enveloping Sam. Hee. Do you think I will be as careless as before? You are too naive. Chapter 2332. Pass Bang. Sam, who had turned into a puddle of blood, was extremely fast. In an instant, he slammed into Zhuowen's chest. Fortunately, Zhuowen reacted quickly and used the phagocytosis to block in front of him. Even so, when the puddle of blood slammed into the phagocytosis, a huge force was transmitted through the phagocytosis to Zhuowen's body, causing Zhuowen to let out a muffled groan and his face to turn slightly pale. Zhuowen once again used the Big Bang technique. A powerful spatial tearing force pervaded his body. Unfortunately, Sam was extremely cautious this time. Although the power of Heaven and Earth Splitter was powerful, Sam had fled in advance, causing Zhuowen's attack to miss. Bang! 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 The two once again engaged in a fierce battle. This time, Zhuowen was completely at a disadvantage. Even though he had the infinite ice lotus and the phagocytosis at the same time, he was still fiercely suppressed by Sam. Sam let out a light breath. He knew that the white-clothed youth in front of him should not have any more trump cards. Based on the current situation, Sam knew that it would not be long before this kid would be defeated by him. Rumble. A muffled sound like thunder rang out. Sam's fist was extremely crafty. Like a viper hunting for its prey, it swiftly swept out and ruthlessly struck Zhuowen's chest. This punch was too terrifying. The phagocytosis and the infinite ice lotus in front of Zhuowen were all blasted away. Under this heavy blow, Zhuowen fell onto the white jade bridge like a withered leaf, smashing a deep hole in the bridge's surface. Brother Zhuo, Xiao Lang and the other two watched with fear and worry in their hearts. Hee. Kid, with your strength, it would not be difficult for you to pass my trial. Unfortunately, you are too arrogant. Not only did you want to bring those 3 pieces of trash over, you even tried to kill me. You really overestimated yourself. Sam crossed his arms and hovered in midair, looking down at the young man in white who was deeply embedded in the bridge. Sam was well aware of how terrifying his punch was. In his opinion, the white-clothed young man who had taken his punch head-on would be severely injured even if he didn't die. Now do you know how insignificant and useless you are? The corners of Sam's mouth curled into a smile, but his smile quickly froze because he discovered that there was a figure wriggling in the pit. The white-clothed youth who had been severely injured by him was actually slowly struggling to stand up. "You're actually not dead yet. You're quite lucky. However, let's see if you can take my next punch," Sam snorted coldly. He bent his right knee and stomped on the ground. His entire body plummeted down like a meteor, and the direction his right knee fell just happened to be the head of the white-clothed youth in the deep pit. However, when Sam was about to approach the white-clothed youth, he discovered that there was an extremely terrifying restriction around him. This restriction was extremely terrifying. It was as if countless chains had sealed his limbs and bones. Sam wanted to move, but he found that he couldn't move at all. What's going on? Sam's eyes revealed a touch of fear. Zhuowen stood up shakily and smiled faintly. "I didn't want to use this move at first, but unfortunately, you forced me to this point. Even if this move consumes a lot of energy, I'll still kill you." After saying that, Zhuowen raised his right hand and pointed at the void. Suddenly, the spatial restriction became more and more terrifying. Sam, who was the closest, felt it the most clearly. He clearly felt that this restriction wasn't just a spatial restriction, but also a freezing of time. Then, Sam saw a waning sun slowly rising behind Zhuowen. The moment this waning sun rose, the calm sea suddenly surged with waves tens of thousands of feet high, as if worshipping this waning sun that had just risen. Space-time law ability? How is that possible? It's impossible to comprehend a space-time law ability just by passing the first stage. When Sam saw the rising waning sun, the fear in his eyes couldn't be erased for a long time. Sam finally knew why the Time Frog King died in the hands of this kid. It was because this kid had comprehended his own space-time law ability. In this trial space, space-time law ability was the fatal weakness of challengers. This kind of ability had an absolute suppression on them. Bang bang bang. As the waning sun rose, clouds of blood mist burst out from Sam's body. Countless blood-red mucus splashed out, looking extremely disgusting. "I'm not willing." When the waning sun rose to its highest point, Sam roared at the sky. Then, he was completely annihilated under the light of the waning sun. After killing Sam, Zhuowen's forehead was covered in cold sweat. His face was even paler. Even his body was shaking as if he would fall at any time. At this moment, Zhuowen was even weaker than when he fought the Time Frog King. After all, he was seriously injured by Sam before he used the waning sun over the sea. Now, after using the waning sun over the sea, Zhuowen's injuries would only worsen. Taking a deep breath, Zhuowen took out the heavenly domain starry sky essence from his spirit ring and slowly swallowed it. The injuries on his body instantly healed, but the fatigue in his spirit did not disappear. Although Zhuowen knew that he would not enter the trial space with his body, but with his spirit, this space was extremely magical. Although he only entered with his spirit, he could use and bring in the spirit ring and the things inside. Even the heavenly domain starry sky essence and other healing divine medicines were all effective. Anything that could be used in the outside world, his spirit could also use in this space. "Brother Zhuo, are you okay?" Xiao Lang and the other two hurriedly came to Zhuowen's side, their faces filled with excitement. Sam's death meant that the three of them could enter the second island. "I'm fine, I just consumed a lot of energy. Let me recover first." Zhuowen waved his hand, then immediately took out a futon, sat down cross-legged, and began to recuperate. In fact, after taking the heavenly domain starry sky essence, Zhuowen's injuries were basically healed. The reason why he said so was to observe Xiao Lang and the other two. If the three of them coveted the treasures on Zhuowen's body and launched a sneak attack while he was heavily injured, Zhuowen wouldn't mind eliminating the three of them. Whether it was the phagocytosis or the everlasting ice lotus, they were all supreme treasures in the outside world. These three were not blind. Naturally, they could see the preciousness of Zhuowen's phagocytosis and the everlasting ice lotus. However, Xiao Lang and the other two didn't have any ulterior motives. Instead, they stood around Zhuowen and took the initiative to protect Zhuowen. Zhuowen secretly nodded in his heart. Half an hour later, he stood up and said lightly, "Let's go to the second island." The chubby cultivator stumbled back. When he reached the end of the bridge, he sat down on the ground and said with lingering fear, Sam's human form was too terrifying. Judy was directly born by Sam's body. Fortunately, I ran fast enough. Maybe I would have been left there too. Thinking of the last miserable state of the thin and tall cultivator, the chubby cultivator only shuddered. Chapter 23:33. Valor. The fat cultivator frowned slightly. He and the thin and tall cultivator were both guards of the bridge. If either of them had an accident, it would attract Ancestor Lu's attention. If he hid it and didn't report it, he would be severely punished. However, the two of them had violated the rules and entered the bridge. If the plump cultivator had told the truth, he would have been severely punished as well. After thinking about it, the fat cultivator thought of an idea. He looked deeply at the bridge and muttered, "Anyway, you guys are dead. It's not too much to let you guys be the scapegoat." After saying that, the slightly fat cultivator quickly left the bridgehead. Not long after the fat cultivator left, Zhuowen brought Xiao Lang and the other two to the bridge. Zhuowen looked at the two cave mansions on the side of the bridge. His eyes revealed a contemplative look. He couldn't help but think of the thin and tall cultivator and the fat cultivator from before. It seemed that these cave mansions belonged to these two guys. As for the identity of these two guys, Zhuowen could completely guess. They must be guarding the bridge to prevent other dangerous creatures from the Sea of Time from invading. Zhuowen's guess was not wrong, but there was one thing he did not guess. The two cultivators guarding the bridge were indeed there to prevent the invasion of other dangerous creatures in the Sea of Time and Space, but at the same time, they also had another duty, and that was to register the new challengers. However, of the two guards, one was killed by Sam and the other went to report to Ancestor Lu, so they naturally missed Zhuowen, the newcomer. "Brother Xiao, do you know where your friend is?" Zhuowen turned to look at Xiao Lang and asked. Xiao Lang smiled and said, "Brother Zhuo, where is the jade talisman I gave you before?" Zhuowen took out the jade talisman from the spirit ring and handed it to Xiao Lang. "It's here. This thing doesn't seem to be a communication jade talisman, right?" Xiao Lang smiled and said, "This is indeed not a communication jade talisman, but a positioning jade talisman. This jade talisman contains my friend's aura. As long as the distance between the jade talisman and my friend is not more than 1,000 li, this jade talisman can accurately locate my friend's aura. Back then, when my friend left the first island, he left behind this jade talisman for me so that I can look for him when I enter the second island." As he spoke, Xiao Lang's right hand formed a sword and pointed at the jade talisman in his hand. With a swoosh sound, the surface of the jade talisman emitted a gentle glow. After which, the jade talisman floated in the air, chose a certain direction and slowly flew off. "Looks like my friend is still on the island. Let's follow him." Xiao Lang's gaze shook. He immediately followed the jade talisman. Zhuowen and the rest naturally followed closely behind. This was a cliff path with rows upon rows of rock walls on both sides. Moreover, this island was covered in ice and snow all year round. As Zhuowen and the other three walked, the sky was still constantly snowing, and the path beneath their feet was covered in thick snow. The path was winding and complicated. The four of them walked for about a quarter of an hour before finally walking out of the path. What appeared in front of them was an extremely large valley. This valley was filled with birds, flowers, and trees. In the middle of the valley, a silver waterfall flowed down, looking spectacular. The scene in the valley was a sharp contrast to the scene of the island outside. In this valley that was like spring all year round, there were caves of different shapes and sizes. Zhuowen stood at the entrance with the corners of his mouth slightly raised. How could he not see that the reason why this valley was different was because there was some kind of restriction set up in this valley? The jade talisman stopped at the entrance of the valley. To be more precise, it was blocked outside the restriction. "Brother Zhuo, there's a restriction here. What should we do?" Xiao Lang looked at Zhuowen and asked. "Don't worry, I'll take care of this restriction." As Zhuowen spoke, he waved his sleeve and summoned the beast bone array disc. At the same time, his right hand formed seals again and again, looking quite unfathomable. The restriction in the valley wasn't very strong. It was only a level 5 great array. Moreover, it didn't have any defensive effect. There wasn't even a monitoring array inside. It was obvious that the purpose of the person who set up the array was only to improve the environment in the valley. Not long after, Zhuowen opened a small gap on the edge of the restriction, just enough for one person to pass through. Now it's done, let's go in. Zhuowen smiled and took the lead to follow the jade talisman into the restriction. Although the valley was large, there weren't many cave dwellings inside. There were only about 50 to 60 of them, which meant that there were at least 50 to 60 cultivators in this valley. Although the number wasn't many, compared to the first island where Xiao Lang and the others were, this place was much more lively. Moreover, these cave dwellings were basically closed. It was obvious that most of the cultivators inside were in a state of seclusion. Whiz! The jade talisman instantly flew out and flew towards the cave dwellings in the center. Finally, it stopped in front of a cave dwelling that was shaped like a bamboo house. The instant the jade talisman stopped in front of the bamboo house, the restriction on the surface of the bamboo house was opened. A grey-clothed woman walked out from inside. This grey-clothed woman's figure was slightly bloated, and there were some freckles on her face. Although she wasn't ugly, she wasn't good-looking either. She could only be considered a very ordinary woman. The grey-clothed woman clearly intended to go out. However, when her gaze fell on the jade talisman in front of the door, she was immediately stunned. Immediately after, the grey-clothed woman turned her head and finally noticed Zhuowen and the other three. Of course, the grey-clothed woman's gaze was mostly on Xiao Lang and the other two. As for Zhuowen, it was her first time seeing him. Xiao Lang, Xiao Yin, and Xiao Fu, you're finally here. The grey-clothed woman's eyes revealed a look of joy. She hurriedly stepped forward and sized up Xiao Lang and the other two. Moreover, she chatted with the three of them. After the four of them chatted for a while, Xiao Lang pointed at Zhuowen beside him and said, "Junior sister Ruqing, this is Zhuowen. This time, the three of us were able to enter the second island thanks to brother Zhuowen." The grey-clothed woman looked at Zhuowen in surprise. Soon after, she chuckled and revealed an indifferent expression. She casually said to Zhuowen, "Thank you for your help, brother. Otherwise, I don't know when I would be able to see the three of them again." Zhuowen nodded and didn't say anything. He could tell from the grey-clothed woman's eyes that she didn't believe that he had brought Xiao Lang and the other two here. Xiao Lang felt a little awkward. Just as he was about to explain, Zhuowen's eyes indicated that he didn't need to say anything. Zhuowen's signal with his eyes was naturally seen by the grey-clothed woman. The grey-clothed woman took this signal as an embarrassing action of the white-clothed young man in front of her after his lie was seen through. She felt a little contempt in her heart. The grey-clothed woman's reaction was mainly due to the fact that Zhuowen's aura was too weak. It was only at the 7th level of the illusory sky realm. This was also the reason why the grey-clothed woman had a preconceived notion that the white-clothed young man before her was definitely not strong enough. Chapter 2334. Tang Ruqing, when you entered the island, you should have been registered, right? I believe you will soon be assigned cave residences. The grey-robed woman looked at Xiao Lang and the others. Registered? No, we came in directly. We didn't meet anyone on the way, Xiao Lang said in surprise. The grey-robed woman frowned slightly and said, "How is that possible? There are always two guards at the end of the bridge. When you entered the island, you were recorded by those two guards. How is it possible that you didn't meet them?" Xiao Lang spread his hands and said, "We did see two cave residences at the end of the bridge. However, there was no one there, so we came in by ourselves." The grey-robed woman pondered for a moment and sighed softly, "You can stay in my cave residence first. Since the guards aren't here, something might have happened. I will go and ask around. You should know that if you live on the island without being registered, you will easily be treated as an alien. At that time, other cultivators on the island will denounce you." Xiao Lang and the others looked at each other and nodded seriously. After all, the grey-robed woman was so cautious that she obviously didn't deceive them. Under the grey-robed woman's lead, the four of them entered her cave residence. Through the conversation between the grey-robed woman and Xiao Lang, Zhuowen learned that the grey-robed woman's name was Tang Ruqing. She was also a rogue cultivator. Her cultivation was at the early stage of the Void Heaven 8th step, but her refining skills were well known throughout the Six Desires heavenly domain. Zhuoan knew that Tang Ruqing didn't have a good impression of him because of Xiao Lang's words at the beginning, so he didn't say much. Tang Ruqing was obviously not an unreasonable woman. When she found that Zhuoan was silent, her tone softened a lot, and she didn't show the disdain she had at the beginning. Tang Ruqing's cave residence was very large. There were 7 or 8 rooms inside, and most of them were refining materials. She casually tidied up and chose 4 rooms for Zhuoan, Xiao Lang, and the others to live in. By the way, since the 4 of you passed the second checkpoint, you should have a corresponding reward. Do you want to go to the center of the island with me to receive the reward? Tang Ruqing looked at Zhuoan and the others and asked. That's good too. If we can obtain rare materials, I hope you can help us a little, Xiao Lang said with a smile. Tang Ruqing smiled and said, there's no need to say such things between friends. By the way, Miss Tang, the 4 of us are unfamiliar faces. When we go out, I'm afraid we'll be recognized by others. Zhuoan voiced his concern. Tang Ruqing smiled faintly. Don't worry. Most of the cultivators who enter this place are stubborn. All they think about is how to pass the 3rd stage. They don't have time to chat, so most of the cultivators don't know each other. Even if you are unfamiliar faces, it is impossible to arouse the suspicion of other cultivators. Moreover, most of the cultivators here are in seclusion. It will be difficult for you to meet them on the road, unless it is the guard of the bridge or that Ancestor Lu. When Tang Ruqing mentioned Ancestor Lu, Zhuoan saw a hint of reverence in her eyes. It seemed that the Ancestor Lu she was talking about was not a simple person. Let's go. As long as there are no unfamiliar caves here, we won't attract the attention of others. Now, follow me to the center of the island. As Tang Ruqing spoke, he led Zhuoan, Xiao Lang and the other 2 towards the center of the island in the depths of the valley. While Tang Ruqing's group of 5 were heading towards the center of the island, in the middle of the valley, there was a hidden cave dwelling hidden within the waterfall. Inside the cave, the slightly plump cultivator was trembling as he knelt on one knee. In front of him, there was a stone pillar. The top of the stone pillar was as smooth as a mirror, and a stalwart figure was sitting cross-legged on it. Beside the stone pillar, a beautiful figure suddenly stood there without saying a word. What happened at the bridge? The stalwart figure sitting cross-legged on the stone pillar was a rather young man. He had a pair of beautiful phoenix eyes, red lips, and white teeth. He was a rare handsome man. The slightly plump cultivator hurriedly said, Ancestor Lu, it's actually like this. Judith and I have always been dutifully guarding the bridge, but today, I discovered that there were terrifying battle fluctuations coming from the other side of the bridge. The entire bridge was shaking. In order to find out the reason, and for the safety of the other fellow Taoists on the island, we risked our lives to see what was going on in front of the bridge. We didn't go far before we saw a challenger fighting with Sam. After all, we are fellow Taoists. When the challenger was fighting with Sam, we were quite worried. We were eager to save people, so we went to help. However, Sam was too powerful. Not only did he injure me, Judith also died. At this point, the slightly plump cultivator didn't continue. He knew that there was no need to say what happened next. Ancestor Lu had more or less guessed it. What form is Sam in? Ancestor Lu asked indifferently. The slightly plump cultivator's eyes flickered as he forced a smile and said, it's in the form of an animal. However, before he could finish his words, he was struck in the chest by a huge force and was sent flying, crashing into the rock wall behind him. If Sam was in the form of an animal, would you be so afraid? Ancestor Lu said indifferently. The slightly plump cultivator hurriedly knelt down and said, Ancestor Lu is indeed perceptive. Sam is in human form. What happened to the challenger? Ancestor Lu asked with interest. This subordinate ran away, but before I left, Sam completely suppressed the challenger. I'm afraid, it's over. The slightly plump cultivator said cautiously. Ancestor Lu nodded. He had experienced how strong Sam was in human form. If he hadn't been lucky enough at that time, he might have died at Sam's hands. Ancestor Lu was quite interested that the challenger could attract the attention of Sam in human form. As for whether that cultivator could also defeat Sam in human form, he also felt that it was very unlikely. You can leave. I won't nominate any more guards for the bridge, Ancestor Lu said rather heroically. The slightly plump cultivator trembled. He looked up at the man on the stone pillar excitedly and said, Ancestor Lu, could it be that you— Yes, I'm coming out of seclusion. Ancestor Lu smiled faintly and slowly stood up with his hands behind his back. There was a soul-stirring aura lingering around his body. Congratulations, Ancestor Lu. The slightly plump cultivator hurriedly bowed on the ground and then left the cave abode with excitement. The slightly plump cultivator knew very well what it meant for Ancestor Lu to come out of seclusion. It meant that he was going to challenge the third level. Moreover, Ancestor Lu had said that if he came out of seclusion, he would lead the cultivators on the island to the third island. He would never go back on his words. It was precisely because of Ancestor Lu's promise and the fact that he was indeed the most talented cultivator on this island and had the deepest understanding of space-time law that the cultivators on the island unanimously regarded him as their leader. Moreover, most of the cultivators' resources were given to Ancestor Lu so that he could quickly comprehend the power of space-time law. If he could create a space-time law ability, it would naturally be best. Ancestor Lu carried the high hopes of many cultivators on the island for the arrival of this day. Chapter 2335. Space-time core. After the chubby cultivator left, Patriarch Lu's gaze finally landed on the beautiful figure beside the stone pillar. His eyes were filled with infatuation. The figure was an extremely beautiful woman. She was like an otherworldly fairy who stood aloof from the world. Miss Xiangjuan, I've obtained the space-time core for you. Once we leave the river of space-time quicksand, this will be my betrothal gift to you. If Miss Xiangjuan thinks it's not enough, I'll also obtain the space-time key for you, Patriarch Lu said with infatuation. The beautiful woman before him was no stranger to Zhuoan. She was Yarrow Xiangjuan, whom he had met once before. Yarrow Xiangjuan looked at Patriarch Lu indifferently and said, that will have to wait until you obtain the space-time key. I can't make this decision. Only my master can. Patriarch Lu laughed and said, both the space-time core and the space-time key are good things. As long as I give them to your master and the Six Desires Palace as betrothal gifts, I don't think they will refuse. Besides, you and I are well matched. Although the Lu Shrine is not as strong as the Six Desires Palace, it is still one of the top forces in the Six Desires Heavenly region. I, Patriarch Lu, am the successor of the Lu Shrine. I believe that I am worthy of you, Xiangjuan. Yarrow Xiangjuan continued to look on coldly. There was a trace of disgust in her beautiful eyes. Looking at the high-spirited Patriarch Lu, Yarrow Xiangjuan thought of the man who had carried her through the river of time. I wonder how he is now. Is he still lingering in the space-time law zone? I wonder if he will blame me for leaving without saying goodbye. Thinking of this, Yarrow Xiangjuan could not help but be absent-minded. The high-spirited Patriarch Lu's gaze fell on Yarrow Xiangjuan's beautiful face. When he saw that Yarrow Xiangjuan was absent-minded, he frowned but did not say anything. In the center of the island, there was still a stone pillar. The surface of the stone pillar was carved with many complicated patterns and patterns. Xiao Lang, Xiao Yin, and Xiao Fu all went forward to communicate with the stone pillar. The three of them had only received a broken part of the space-time roulette. It was basically worthless. Tang Ruqing's eyes were filled with doubt. In any case, these three people had passed the second stage. Why were their rewards so trashy? Or was there something wrong with the stone pillars? When Zhuoan arrived in front of the stone pillar, Tang Ruqing couldn't help but recall Xiao Lang's words. He muttered in a low voice, could it be that what Xiao Lang said was true? The one who brought them here was really this Zhuoan? Let's see what his rewards are first before making a conclusion. After Zhuoan communicated with the stone pillar, a secret chamber appeared beneath the stone pillar. Next, a pile of components of the space-time roulette was revealed. Moreover, every single one of these components was the absolute core of the space-time roulette, unlike the severely damaged components of the space-time roulette that Xiao Lang and the other two possessed. Spacetime core. This guy actually got the spacetime core as a reward. What did he do to get the spacetime core as a reward? Tang Ruqing's gaze fell on a transparent crystal the size of half a palm that was suspended among the many parts. This crystal contained rich spacetime rule power, and Tang Ruqing could not help but exclaim in surprise. Spacetime void. Zhuowen's eyes narrowed, and his attention also fell on the transparent crystal. He quickly recognized that this was the spacetime core. When he first entered the bottom of the cliff, he saw Yarrow Xiangjuan frozen at the bottom of the sea. She was holding a spacetime core in her hand, so he was no stranger to it. Zhuowen was the first to put away the spacetime core. He was quite excited in his heart. After learning the function of the spacetime core from Yarrow Xiangjuan, Zhuowen had been drooling over it. However, because Yarrow Xiangjuan mysteriously disappeared later, he lost the clues about the spacetime core, so he did not pay too much attention to it. Now, he actually got the spacetime core here by chance. It was definitely an unexpected surprise. Tang Ruqing watched enviously as Zhuowen put away the spacetime core. Naturally, he no longer doubted the authenticity of what Xiao Lang said before. Zhuowen could get such a valuable reward. Obviously, the island assessed him as the one who contributed the most during the challenge. Otherwise, it would be impossible to get so many rewards. I really didn't expect Brother Zhuo to be so secretive. I was rude just now. Zhuowen was immersed in excitement when he heard Tang Ruqing's sour words. Miss Tang, you don't have to say that. It was just a misunderstanding. I heard that Miss Tang is a refiner. I don't know if Miss Tang can help me refine a small spacetime roulette. In terms of remuneration, this Zhuowen will not be stingy. Zhuowen smiled. Tang Ruqing looked at Zhuowen and said seriously, the price I ask for is not cheap. You have to be prepared. Don't worry, Miss Tang. As long as it is a price this Shuo can accept, this Shuo will definitely not frown. Zhuowen said straightforwardly. Very straightforward. Tang Ruqing laughed. Tang Ruqing took the four people back to the cave residence, and Tang Ruqing reached a deal with Zhuowen. Tang Ruqing helped Zhuowen refine a small spacetime roulette, and Zhuowen needed to lend her the spacetime core to study for a while. The magic of the spacetime core was well known. The most important part of the spacetime roulette was the spacetime core. Tang Ruqing was an extremely powerful refiner. In addition to the spacetime core, she could also refine the spacetime roulette. However, the spacetime core was different. It represented the highest level of refiners in that era. Even now, the spacetime core definitely had extremely high research value. Tang Ruqing knew that if she could study the spacetime core, it was not impossible for him to refine a fake spacetime core. However, the spacetime core was too rare. There were only 2 spacetime cores in the Quicksand River. Tang Ruqing knew that one of them was in the hands of Ancestor Lu. With Ancestor Lu's personality, he definitely wouldn't let her study it. Zhuowen being able to obtain the spacetime core was a pleasant surprise for her. While Tang Ruqing was in seclusion to refine the small spacetime roulette, Xiao Lang and the others were also in seclusion in their own rooms. Zhuowen was locked in their own room. Zhuowen took out the phagocytosis, and then took out 3 Dao fruits. His eyes revealed a fervent and crazy look. The phagocytosis that had fused with 2 Dao fruits was indeed much more powerful than before. In particular, the power of the heavenly Dao rhyme circulating on its surface was also very powerful. It was also very harmful to the creatures in this trial ground. At present, it was not very possible for him to break through. The only way to increase his strength, besides comprehending more spacetime rules, was to fuse the Dao fruits into the phagocytosis again to increase the power of the phagocytosis. Let's try fusing the Dao fruits. Back then, Zhuowen had seen Quang Li fuse the Dao fruits into the phagocytosis with his own eyes. He knew the specific steps. As for whether it would succeed or not, he felt a little uncertain. Chapter 2336. Luzu 3 days later, Zhuowen walked out of his room with excitement in his eyes. He held the phagocytosis in his right hand. The surface of this ordinary-looking phagocytosis was surrounded by extremely dense heavenly Dao energy. This heavenly Tao energy was even denser and stronger than before. During these 3 days, Zhuowen had been in seclusion to fuse with the Tao fruit and enter the phagocytosis. Originally, he had only intended to give it a try. He had never expected that he would succeed in the end. After fusing with the second Tao fruit, the phagocytosis's attacks contained extremely powerful heavenly Tao energy. Its power was much stronger than before. However, when Zhuowen was about to fuse with the third Tao fruit, the phagocytosis showed signs of rejection. Zhuowen knew that this was probably because the phagocytosis was unable to withstand the heavenly Tao energy of the third Tao fruit and was resisting. After all, the phagocytosis was still in a sealed state. Zhuowen had only just unlocked the 3,000 seals on the phagocytosis. He was far from being able to unleash the true power of the phagocytosis. The heavenly Tao energy within the Tao fruit was extremely terrifying. Ordinary void sky divine artifacts would not be able to withstand the heavenly Tao energy. Only a king devourer supreme treasure like the phagocytosis could barely withstand the heavenly Tao energy within the Tao fruit. However, it seemed like it could only withstand the power of 2 Tao fruits. If he wanted to fuse with the third Tao fruit, Zhuowen knew that he would have to unlock more of the phagocytosis's restrictions. Only then would the phagocytosis be able to withstand the heavenly Tao energy of the third Tao fruit. Zhuowen glanced at Tang Ruqing's room and saw that the door was tightly shut. He knew that Tang Ruqing was probably refining a small space-time roulette, so he did not intend to disturb him. Zhuowen, you've come out of seclusion. Do you want to take a walk with me? I heard that it's very lively outside. The door to the side opened and Xiao Lang walked out. He smiled at Zhuowen. What's going on outside? Zhuowen asked in surprise. Xiao Lang smiled and said, I heard that Ancestor Lu has come out of seclusion. Because of this, all the cultivators on the island have come out of seclusion. I heard that Ancestor Lu has come out of seclusion, which means that Ancestor Lu is preparing to break through the third checkpoint. Don't you think it will be lively outside? Zhuowen revealed a look of understanding. Tang Ruqing had already mentioned Ancestor Lu to them before. It was said that Patriarch Lu was the most talented expert here. His comprehension of the laws of space-time was something that the other cultivators on the island could not hope to match. It was precisely because of this that all the cultivators on the island had high hopes for Ancestor Lu. In addition, Ancestor Lu had once promised that if he mastered the space-time law in the future, he would definitely kill the guardian of the third checkpoint and bring everyone over. Therefore, Ancestor Lu was naturally elected as the leader of the island. Even some experts with similar strength to Ancestor Lu took the initiative to acknowledge Ancestor Lu as their leader, bowing their heads in submission. Now that Ancestor Lu came out of seclusion, he was bound to fulfill the promise back then. How could the others not be excited? Where are the brothers Xiao Yin and Xiao Fu? Zhuowen asked in surprise. The 2 of them are still in seclusion. I happen to have some time and want to go watch the show. Why don't Brother Zhuo come along? Xiao Lang looked at Zhuowen expectantly. Zhuowen pondered for a moment before finally nodding and saying with a smile, that's fine too. Since Ancestor Lu was known as the expert with the deepest comprehension of the laws of spacetime on the island, Zhuowen wanted to see just how strong Ancestor Lu was. Moreover, if Ancestor Lu wanted to challenge the third checkpoint, Zhuowen was looking forward to seeing what kind of existence the guardian of the third checkpoint was. Zhuowen was definitely going to challenge the third checkpoint. If he could see the guardian's methods in advance, it would definitely be of great benefit to Zhuowen when he challenged the third checkpoint in the future. In the middle of the valley, there was a large open space. At this moment, a high platform had been set up in the open space, and a proud figure was standing on the platform. Below the platform was a bustling crowd. Although the valley was not big, the number of cultivators here was not small. Looking from a distance below the high platform, there were no less than 100 people. Zhuowen and Xiao Lang came to the open space below the high platform and stood in an inconspicuous corner, silently looking at the proud figure on the high platform. Zhuowen knew that the proud figure should be Ancestor Lu. Ancestor Lu looked young and had an extremely handsome face. His hands were behind his back, and the arrogance in his eyes was very strong. Zhuowen frowned slightly. He did not like the arrogance in Ancestor Lu's eyes. This kind of arrogance was full of condescension and could even be said to be a little conceited. Zhuowen only glanced at Ancestor Lu, but his gaze fell on a beautiful figure not far behind Ancestor Lu, and his expression changed. This figure was an extremely beautiful woman, and Zhuowen was no stranger to her. Because this woman was Yarrow Shangjuan, whom he had met in the space law area. Zhuowen remembered that Yarrow Shangjuan's body was frozen in time at the bottom of the sea. At that time, Yarrow Shangjuan was holding a time hollow in her hand, which meant that Yarrow Shangjuan had another time hollow in her hand. Zhuowen only glanced at Yarrow Shangjuan, and then withdrew his gaze. He was not familiar with Yarrow Shangjuan, so he did not intend to greet her. Of course, if the person who appeared in front of Zhuowen was not Yarrow Shangjuan, but Yarrow Shangjuan's brother, Zhuowen might go forward to greet him and return the necklace to Yarrow Shangjuan. Speaking of the necklace, Zhuowen felt a little guilty in his heart. Now that the necklace was damaged, it would not be easy to repair it. That necklace had an extremely strong vitality and had saved him several times. He knew that it was definitely a supreme treasure. Yarrow Shangjuan gave this thing to Zhuowen, and Zhuowen knew that he owed Yarrow Shangjuan a lot of favors. The moment Zhuowen withdrew his gaze, Yarrow Shangjuan, who was standing behind the high platform, felt something, and her beautiful eyes could not help but fall on the remote corner where Zhuowen was. When she saw Zhuowen, her delicate body trembled, and she said in her heart, "Zhuowen, why is he here? How did he know the route here?" Yarrow Shangjuan's heart was in a mess. This place was not easy to enter. Without the guidance of a map, ordinary people could not enter at all, but Zhuowen had come in, which made Yarrow Shangjuan suspicious. At the same time, Yarrow Shangjuan's beautiful eyes gently fell on Zhuowen's neck, and when she found that there was no necklace on Zhuowen's neck, her beautiful eyes dimmed. "It seems that he did not accept my kindness. Well, after all, I broke my promise first and abandoned him. It is pardonable for him to do this." Yarrow Shangjuan whispered in her heart. "Ancestor Lu, congratulations on coming out of seclusion." A figure suddenly rushed to the high platform, and landed in front of Ancestor Lu. Ancestor Lu looked at the figure in front of him with a cautious gaze, cupped his fists, and replied, "This is all thanks to everyone. If it were not for everyone's help, this Ancestor Lu would not have been able to reach grand completion of the space-time law. I'm afraid that I would still be an unknown nobody." Appearing in front of Ancestor Lu was a middle-aged man with a white face and no beard. Zhuowen's gaze fell on the middle-aged man with a solemn expression. Chapter 2337. Shenzhen. It's Shenzhen. I didn't expect him to come out of seclusion as well. It seems that he really values Ancestor Lu. Shenzhen's strength is definitely the strongest on this island. It's just that his usage of the space-time rule is not as good as Ancestor Lu's, so their strength is on par. If it was outside, Shenzhen's strength would definitely be much stronger than Ancestor Lu's. There's no need to say that. Since we're trapped here, we have to abide by the rules here. Shenzhen is no exception. However, I heard that in order to escape, Shenzhen plans to join forces with Ancestor Lu to break through the third trial. The surrounding discussions were extremely noisy, and Zhuowen also found out from the discussions that the powerful middle-aged man in front of him was called Shenzhen, and was a half-step void sky ninth step expert. On the high platform, Shenzhen did not care about the discussions of the people below the high platform. Instead, he smiled at Ancestor Lu and said, "Ancestor Lu, the main credit is still your talent. If you don't have talent, what's the use of resources?" Ancestor Lu smiled slightly. Although his words were modest, the pride in his eyes did not decrease. "Ancestor Lu, when do you plan to pass the third trial?" Shenzhen suddenly asked. As soon as Shenzhen asked this question, it immediately attracted the attention of many cultivators present. The originally noisy crowd below also became completely silent. Everyone had come out of seclusion and gathered here for the purpose of this third checkpoint. Ancestor Lu was the cultivator with the highest chance of passing the third trial. Many cultivators here hoped that Ancestor Lu would make a move as soon as possible. Ancestor Lu smiled and said, "I've thought about this matter. Let's wait for half a month. Although I've already come out of seclusion, I still need to consolidate my strength. Only then will I have more confidence. As soon as Ancestor Lu's words came out, although many cultivators revealed looks of disappointment, they all smiled and agreed. Ancestor Lu is right. Only by consolidating your strength can you unleash even more power. At that time, your chances of passing the third trial will be even higher. It's only half a month. We've waited for so long, so there's no harm in waiting for another half a month. The smile at the corners of Ancestor Lu's mouth grew even wider. Soon after, he cupped his hands together towards Shenzhen and said, Elder Shenzhen, you must lend me a hand half a month later. At that time, we will kill the guardian of the third checkpoint and benefit the brothers of the island. As soon as these words were spoken, the cultivators below the high platform were stirred. Shenzhen also cupped his fists excitedly and said, Rest assured, Ancestor Lu. This Shen will definitely help Ancestor Lu kill that guardian. At that time, all of our brothers will be able to leave this damned place. Ancestor Lu nodded and left with Yarrow Shengjuan. Before Yarrow Shengjuan left, she glanced at Zhuowen. When she found that Zhuowen was just lowering his head in contemplation, her beautiful eyes dimmed. After Ancestor Lu left, the surrounding cultivators also dispersed. Brother Zhuo, let's go. Xiao Lang reminded him. Zhuowen frowned slightly, nodded, and left with Xiao Lang. After returning to Tang Ruqing's cave mansion, Zhuowen went into seclusion. He planned to use this half a month to start absorbing the space-time rule power of the second island. The space-time law on this island was gentler than the first island. Zhuowen could easily absorb it and verify his own understanding of the space-time law. In just half a month, Zhuowen's understanding of the space-time law had improved by another level. There was no doubt that Zhuowen's space-time law had reached the great accomplishment level like Ancestor Lu. Moreover, Zhuowen had also comprehended his own space-time divine ability. If he really faced Ancestor Lu would definitely be defeated. Of course, Zhuowen also knew that he could comprehend the space-time divine ability mainly because of the mysterious spaces setting sun and the trace of space-time power in his body. If he didn't have both, Zhuowen wouldn't be able to comprehend the space-time divine ability in a short time. When Zhuowen left the room again, he found that the restriction on Tang Ruqing's door had been opened. Through the gap in the door, Zhuowen found that Tang Ruqing was playing with the space-time hollow in the room. Perhaps because she found Zhuowen, Tang Ruqing turned her face and looked at Zhuowen with a smile and said, Brother Zhuo, you've finally come out of seclusion. Zhuowen nodded and said, Miss Tang, do you know about the space-time roulette? Tang Ruqing smiled slightly and flicked her finger. Suddenly, a palm-sized disc appeared in her palm, and she handed it to Zhuowen. The space-time roulette parts you obtained are all core parts, and they are basically complete, so I didn't encounter much difficulty in refining them. You can rename them. The space-time roulette is too famous, and I'm afraid it will cause trouble, Tang Ruqing said. Zhuowen agreed and said, let's call it the space-time wheel in the future. Then, Miss Tang, shouldn't you return my space-time core to me? Tang Ruqing rolled her eyes at Zhuowen before handing the space-time core back to Zhuowen. She said, the speed of your space-time wheel is definitely unrivaled. If it's combined with this space-time hollow, I don't think there are any flying god artifacts that can match the speed of the space-time wheel. Even experts who have reached the 9th step of the illusionary heavens would struggle. Ruqing, Brother Zhuo, you've all come out of seclusion. Let's go watch Ancestor Lu make it through today. What do you think? Xiao Lang, Xiao Fu, and Xiao Yin walked out of the room as well. When they saw Zhuowen and Tang Ruqing, Xiao Lang called out first. Brother Xiao, we were planning to go even if you didn't say anything. Ancestor Lu is probably very confident about making it through the third trial. If he can kill the Guardian, all of us will have the right to enter the third island, Tang Ruqing said excitedly. The three brothers chuckled. Their eyes were filled with excitement as well. Clearly, they were very eager to see Ancestor Lu defeat the Guardian of the third trial. As they spoke, the group of 5 left the cave and walked towards the stone pillar at the center of the island. At this moment, the area around the stone pillar at the center of the island was bustling with noise and excitement. All the cultivators on the island had come out of seclusion. Everyone stared at the three figures in front of the stone pillar with bright eyes. The three figures were Ancestor Lu, Shenzhen, and Yarou Shangjuan. Shenzhen stood beside Ancestor Lu and his gaze fell on Yarou Shangjuan. He said in a deep voice, "Ancestor Lu, although this woman's strength is not bad, she's still not up to the standard. Why did you bring her here?" Shenzhen's words were not polite at all. The implication was that he thought Yarou Shangjuan would be a burden to them. Ancestor Lu didn't care at all. He transmitted his voice, "Senior Shenzhen, you don't know. Shangjuan isn't as simple as you think because she has the space-time hollow in her body. Moreover, she has mastered the method to use it." Shenzhen's expression immediately became serious. He replied, "Ancestor Lu, is what you said true?" Chapter 2338. Joining hands to break through. Only then did Shenzhen's expression look a little better. He was most afraid that Yarou Shangjuan would drag them down. But now that Ancestor Lu said that Yarou Shangjuan could control the spacetime core, it would be of great help to them in passing the third level. The spacetime core contained an extremely powerful spacetime power. If Yarou Shangjuan could really control the power of the spacetime core, her strength would definitely not be inferior to the two of them. With Yarou Shangjuan, the two of them would be like tigers that had grown wings. Their chances of passing the third level would greatly increase. Ancestor Lu ignored the surprised Shenzhen and cupped his fists towards the surrounding people, saying, "Ancestor Lu is indebted to everyone for thinking highly of me and electing me as the leader of the island. As the leader, I am very clear that I must benefit the brothers below. Today, I plan to join forces with Senior Shenzhen and Miss Shangjuan to pass through the third level. After I chop off the head of the Guardian, it will be the time for everyone to pass through the third level." Ancestor Lu's words were powerful and his cadence immediately infected the emotions of the people below. After saying that, Ancestor Lu turned around and looked at Shenzhen and Yarou Shangjuan. Then, the three of them stretched out their hands and landed on the surface of the stone pillar. Whiz! Suddenly, the surface of the stone pillar erupted with a dazzling white light. Then, the stone pillar began to break apart. In the end, it actually formed a long flight of stairs in the air. This flight of stairs stretched across the sky. As one walked up the stairs, one could not see what was at the end of the stairs. "Is this the entrance to the third level?" Xiao Lang, who was beside Zhuoan, clicked his tongue in wonder. Ancestor Lu and the other two did not hesitate and continued to climb up the stairs. Their speed was neither slow nor slow. After the three of them reached a certain height, the people below also followed and stepped onto the stairs. "Let's go in together. This time, Ancestor Lu plans to lead us through the third level. With Ancestor Lu and the others in front, we are still very safe." Tang Ruqing smiled. "You really believe that Ancestor Lu will succeed?" Zhuoan asked in surprise. Tang Ruqing smiled indifferently and said, "Regardless of whether he succeeds or not, Ancestor Lu has become the final hope of everyone on this island. This can be said to be everyone's last battle. If Ancestor Lu succeeds, then everyone will enter the third island. If he fails, then everyone will die in the checkpoint. Which of the cultivators on this island hasn't been trapped here for hundreds or thousands of years? There are even some who have been trapped here for tens of thousands of years. Everyone has long since grown tired of this life. I might as well give it a try." Zhuoan had a complicated look in his eyes. It seemed that Tang Ruqing and the others in the archipelago had already decided to either succeed or die trying. Either he cleared the stage in one go, or he was willing to die and end it all. The stairs looked very long, but when everyone walked up, they realized that they had reached the end after walking for a short distance. This was a huge white circular platform. The surface of the circular platform was made of sparkling and translucent white jade. It looked pure white and flawless, and was quite pleasing to the eye. At the very front of the platform, Ancestor Lu, Yarou Shangjuan, and Shenzhen stood side by side. The crowd behind them also stopped in their tracks, their gazes blazing as they looked at the backs of Ancestor Lu and the other two. On the platform, there was nothing else except for the crowd. However, everyone wasn't as relaxed as they imagined. They were all secretly on guard against the terrifying things that might happen around them. Whoosh! Suddenly, a gust of cold wind swept out from the platform. It silently bypassed Ancestor Lu and the other two and rushed into the crowd behind them. Poochie! Poochie! In just an instant, several people at the front were caught off guard and were torn to pieces by the power of the cold wind. Bursts of bloody mist erupted, and they couldn't be more dead. The faces of the others changed drastically, and they hurriedly took out their respective divine artifacts to resist this strange cold wind. However, this cold wind contained a rich power of the laws of space and time. Most of the surrounding people only knew a little about the laws of space and time. Among them, there were even fewer who had mastered the laws of space and time. In just an instant, they were utterly defeated and in chaos. Zhuowen, who was hiding in the crowd, frowned slightly. He knew that this should be the third stage's guardian secretly taking action. With just this move, Zhuowen could see that the third stage's guardian was definitely much stronger than the second stage's guardian, Sam, and the first stage's guardian, the Time Frog King. It was a tricky opponent. The moment the cold wind attacked, a black and white light appeared in front of the platform, and a sturdy figure was born from the light. This figure looked like a human, and it was 3 feet tall. It was much taller than everyone present, like a small giant. When the light faded, a terrifying sound of breaking wind resounded. From the black and white light, the tall figure suddenly rushed out. It was so fast that it seemed as if the surrounding space was nothing in front of him. Miss Xiangjuan, what are you doing? Ancestor Lu and Shunjian's gazes were grave, both of them were on alert, their attention firmly fixed on the tall figure that was rushing over, but Ancestor Lu quickly noticed that Yarou Xiangjuan, who was beside him, was actually rushing towards the crowd at the back, and could not help but shout out. The others have been ambushed. I have to go and rescue them. Yarou Xiangjuan's beautiful eyes fell on Zhuowen in the crowd. Her heart trembled, and she planned to rush over to rescue him. Unfortunately, she was caught by Ancestor Lu. Miss Xiangjuan, you will get us killed. The guardian of the third stage has already appeared. If you continue to act like this, we will all die here. Please consider the overall situation. Shunjian coldly snorted. He took out a horsetail whisk with his right hand, and with a gentle wave, white long hair crazily grew, blocking in front of Yarou Xiangjuan. Yarou Xiangjuan frowned, and in the end, she could only turn around. The reason why she was so anxious about the crowd was naturally not because she really cared about them, but because she was worried about Zhuowen. However, after thinking that Zhuowen was not simple, her worry gradually calmed down. At the same time, she secretly said that she was too impatient. Boom! When Yarou Xiangjuan came back to her senses, the tall black figure had already rushed in front of the 3 people. Then, she heard the muffled groans of Shunjian and Ancestor Lu. And Yarou Xiangjuan finally saw the true face of the guardian of the third stage. The tall figure had a robust human body, but it had a head similar to a hawk's. Its hands were also abnormal. The figure had a purple shield in its left hand and a sharp sword in its right hand. Its feet were like eagle claws, covered with barbs. At this moment, the guardian suddenly raised its right hand and fiercely slammed it down. A storm rose around the guardian. Ancestor Lu and Shunjian used all of their strength to block the attack of the gatekeeper. However, from the reddened faces of the two, it could be seen that this attack was not easy to bear. Xiangjuan, why are you still in a daze? Help! Ancestor Lu roared. Yarou Xiangjuan did not dare to be negligent. With a wave of her hand, she immediately took out the space-time hollow. Then, she held the space-time hollow in her left hand and quickly formed a complicated seal with her right hand. Then, the space-time hollow erupted with a terrifying space-time power. A white beam of light shot out from the space-time hollow and heavily fell on the guardian. Chapter 2339. The Gatekeeper. After the gatekeeper was forced back, Ancestor Lu and Shunjian breathed a sigh of relief. Xiangjuan, don't be absent-minded again. Otherwise, we'll die here. Ancestor Lu looked at Yarou Xiangjuan with dissatisfaction. Yarou Xiangjuan didn't say anything. Her beautiful eyes shifted slightly as she looked at the crowd behind her. After discovering that the figure she was concerned about was fine, she relaxed and said, "Ancestor Lu, Senior Shenzhen, it was Xiangjuan's fault just now. Xiangjuan won't let it happen again." Ancestor Lu and Shenzhen's expressions relaxed when they saw Yarou Xiangjuan's good attitude. Ancestor Lu said with a pleasant expression, "That's for the best. Be careful, this beast is about to attack again." Ancestor Lu's face changed drastically. His right hand formed a claw and blasted out as powerful spacetime laws spread out. Shenzhen didn't hesitate and waved the horsetail whisk in his hand. Instantly, the terrifying white fur turned into the most loyal guard and blocked in front of Ancestor Lu, protecting him at all times. Rumble. The gatekeeper coldly snorted and swung the sword in his right hand. Space dislocated and time collapsed, and Ancestor Lu's attack was instantly broken. Boom. However, when the gatekeeper's attack finally landed on the white fur formed by the horsetail whisk, the gatekeeper's figure trembled and blocked the attack. Shenzhen's attack succeeded and he didn't spare the gatekeeper. With a twist of his right hand, the horsetail whisk instantly became like a whirlwind and sealed the gatekeeper. The gatekeeper was instantly enveloped by the sea of white fur of the horsetail whisk, and his figure was difficult to see. Boom. Boom. Unfortunately, the horsetail whisk's envelopment didn't last for long. A terrifying energy fluctuation swept out from it and tore the white fur of the horsetail whisk into pieces. Shenzhen groaned and his face turned pale as he stared solemnly at the tall figure that was unscathed. "This gatekeeper is very strong," Ancestor Lu said in a deep voice. "Let's join forces and kill this gatekeeper." Shenzhen's eyes were filled with killing intent. He knew very well that no matter how strong this gatekeeper was, they had to kill him. Otherwise, none of them would be able to pass. "Let's attack together." Patriarch Lu nodded. He stomped his right foot and formed a seal with both hands. The power of spacetime rules condensed between his hands, making his hands comparable to the most powerful weapons in the world. Shenzhen held the horsetail whisk in his hand and followed closely behind. His divine power surged and coupled with his initial comprehension of the spacetime law, his strength was even stronger than Patriarch Lu's. Yarou Xiangjuan, on the other hand, stood behind the two of them. The time hollow floated in front of her chest, and her slender jade-like hands were plucking the strings of a zither, slowly plucking them. The time hollow suddenly erupted with an extremely terrifying and sharp aura. Pure spacetime power surged out of the spacetime heart, turning into a white ray of light that shot straight towards the gatekeeper. Boom. Boom. The Guardian remained fearless. He held the shield in his left hand while he suddenly slashed out with the sword in his right hand. Instantly, sword chi that covered the sky were like flowing lights that carried the laws of time and space as they smashed out in a vast array. Ancestor Lu, Shenzhen, and Yarou Xiangjuan used all of their skills to block the Guardian's sword chi. Then, the four of them began to fight. While Ancestor Lu and the other three were fighting, the crowd behind them was also quite chaotic. The sinister wind was extremely tough as it shuttled through the crowd. Every time it shuttled, the sinister wind could take away a few people's lives. For a moment, the crowd was in chaos and everyone was in a state of panic. Zhuoan frowned slightly. The sinister wind contained the laws of time and space, and the people around him only knew a little about the laws of time and space. That was why they were so embarrassed by the sinister wind. Zhuoan snorted coldly. His right hand suddenly made a grabbing motion and caught the sinister wind that shuttled through the air. The crowd, who were originally hurriedly dodging, naturally saw Zhuoan's move and all of them were surprised. Everyone had thoroughly experienced the terror of the sinister wind. They did not dare to touch it at all. However, the unfamiliar white-clothed youth in front of them not only easily caught the sinister wind, but also seemed to be unharmed. Everyone was not a fool. They all knew that the white-clothed youth in front of them was not simple. Therefore, everyone approached Zhuoan. Some of them simply hid behind Zhuoan like Tang Ruqing, Xiao Lang, and the others. Zhuoan did not pay much attention to the petty actions of the others. Instead, he clenched his right hand. The power of the laws of time and space burst out and the sinister wind in his hand was instantly torn to pieces. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. The moment Zhuoan tore apart the sinister wind in his hand, The remaining 8 sinister winds seemed to be angered and rushed toward Zhuowen. Zhuowen's eyes were solemn. He was not afraid of one sinister wind, but if 8 sinister winds came together, even he would not dare to underestimate them. Zhuowen's hands formed into claws and grabbed 2 of the sinister winds. Then, he stomped his feet and stepped on the other 2 sinister winds and leaped up. The moment he leaped, the 2 sinister winds in his hand were crushed by him. Then, his hands swept out again like lightning. Bang, bang, bang. In just an instant, Zhuowen shattered the remaining sinister winds and landed lightly on the ground. The group of people hiding behind Zhuowen were all stunned. None of them had expected that there would be such an expert hidden among them. This person's mastery of the laws of time and space has probably reached the minor accomplishment stage. I really did not expect that there would be such an expert besides Xinjian and Ancestor Lu. This person is very unfamiliar. I don't think I have seen him before. However, to be able to comprehend the laws of time and space to the minor accomplishment stage, this person is amazing. Although this person's strength may not be as strong as Xinjian and Ancestor Lu, he is definitely not someone we can compare to. The crowd discussed animatedly, and they all came out to thank Zhuowen. At the same time, many people were secretly discussing Zhuowen's origin. Of course, in their hearts, the strongest people on the island were actually Xinjian and Ancestor Lu. Among them, Xinjian's cultivation was at the half-step void sky 9th step. Although he had only grasped the laws of time and space to the minor accomplishment stage, his strength was extremely terrifying. An ordinary cultivator with the laws of time and space to the minor accomplishment stage could not compare to him. Ancestor Lu, on the other hand, had already grasped the laws of time and space to the major accomplishment stage. His terrifying strength was definitely far beyond everyone's imagination. Zhuowen stood in place, expressionless, and received everyone's thanks. "You're actually not dead." Suddenly, a surprised voice sounded. Then, in the crowd not far away, a slightly fat cultivator looked at Zhuowen in surprise. Zhuowen glanced at the slightly fat cultivator indifferently. He naturally recognized this guy. Wasn't he one of the 2 guards on the bridge last time? The slightly fat cultivator's companion, the thin and tall cultivator, was resurrected by Sam, and this guy was so scared that he fled. Zhuowen still remembered this vividly. Chapter 2340. Taking turns to fight, the chubby cultivator sensed that he had made a mistake in his words, and cold sweat dripped down his forehead. He hurriedly waved his hand and said, "Junior spoke rashly. I hope Senior won't forgive me." Zhuowen couldn't be bothered to pay attention to the chubby cultivator. Ever since he knew that this guy had abandoned his companions and fled, Zhuowen didn't have a good impression of him. "Senior, your spacetime laws are at least at the initial stage. You should do your part for everyone." The chubby cultivator cautiously approached Zhuowen and probed. The moment the chubby cultivator said that, the surrounding people were all moved, and they looked at Zhuowen with hopeful gazes. Zhuowen sneered and said, "You mean to say that I should also go up and die?" The chubby cultivator's face stiffened, and a chill flashed through his heart. He didn't expect this white-clothed youth to speak so rudely. Zhuowen's words caused many of the surrounding cultivators to be dissatisfied. However, in view of Zhuowen's strength, they didn't dare to say anything. "Brother Zhuo, you're so strong. Why don't you make a move?" Xiao Lang led Tang Ruqing, Xiao Fu, and Xiao Yin to Zhuowen's side and asked cautiously. Zhuowen sighed and said, "Didn't you notice? The guardian of the 3rd checkpoint is completely different from the previous 2. His strength doesn't increase with the number of people entering the checkpoint, but with the number of people attacking him." "What?" Xiao Lang, Tang Ruqing, and the other 3 looked at each other. They didn't expect the guardian of the 3rd checkpoint to be so different. Tang Ruqing was the first to react and said softly, "Brother Zhuo, are you saying that in a one-on-one fight, we have an advantage?" Zhuowen nodded and said, "That's true. Ancestor Lu and the other 2 joining forces to attack the guardian wasn't a wise move. Taking turns is the best way. Now that the 3 of them have joined forces, the guardian's strength has become even stronger." Although it was Zhuowen's first time entering the 3rd checkpoint, Zhuowen could tell that something was amiss with just a glance. Previously, when Ancestor Lu and Shenzhen attacked the gatekeeper, Yarou Shangjuan did not attack. The gatekeeper's strength was ordinary, but with Yarou Shangjuan's addition, Zhuowen could clearly feel that the gatekeeper's strength had increased by several times. Therefore, Zhuowen was able to guess this pattern. Zhuowen's voice wasn't loud, but it wasn't soft either. Many people behind him heard it clearly, and a look of understanding appeared on their faces. Some people had also noticed the strange behavior of the gatekeeper, but they didn't pay too much attention to it. On the other hand, the plump cultivator's cheeks were slightly red. His righteous words had turned into a joke. Then let's have Ancestor Lu and the other two withdraw from the battlefield, and then take turns fighting them. Someone in the crowd suddenly suggested. This suggestion was immediately approved and echoed by everyone. Then I'll go inform Ancestor Lu and the others. The chubby cultivator seemed to be trying to snatch the credit. As soon as the crowd lifted him up, he impatiently rushed out. Wait. Zhuowen's face changed slightly. He didn't expect the chubby cultivator to be so impulsive. He actually rushed out directly. The chubby cultivator obviously heard Zhuowen's shout and sneered in his heart. He simply ignored Zhuowen. Ancestor Lu, the gatekeeper of this third level, is different from the previous two levels. The more people attacking him, the stronger the gatekeeper. This subordinate thinks that we should take turns fighting them. The chubby cultivator impatiently transmitted his voice. Ancestor Lu, who was originally fighting with the gatekeeper, naturally heard the chubby cultivator's voice transmission and his eyes lit up. He also noticed the abnormality of the gatekeeper. Now that the chubby cultivator had mentioned it, he immediately figured out the connection, so he quickly discussed with Shenzhen and Yarou Shangjuan. Zhuowen frowned slightly, looking at the chubby cultivator who came back complacently. He said, "You harmed the three of them." Zhuowen knew that this chubby cultivator was Ancestor Lu's confidant, and he, Zhuowen, should have no right to speak in front of Ancestor Lu. Harmed them? Are you kidding? Didn't you come up with this theory? I told Ancestor Lu the right way. How can I harm them? Or do you think I stole your credit? The chubby cultivator arrogantly walked past Zhuowen, like a fox borrowing the tiger's might, with a posture of victory. Zhuowen was too lazy to pay attention to this guy, but silently looked at Ancestor Lu, who was preparing to separate in front of him. He could only remind in a clear voice, it's not appropriate to take turns fighting them. The gatekeeper's strength may not necessarily decline, you'd better not take risks. Ancestor Lu, who was originally planning to act, frowned when he heard Zhuowen's voice. Obviously, he didn't know this white-clothed youth. Shenzhen also had the same expression. On the contrary, when Yarou Shangjuan saw Zhuowen speak, her beautiful eyes loosened and the corner of her mouth revealed a smile. Yarou Shangjuan's expression happened to be seen by Ancestor Lu. The originally hesitant Ancestor Lu's eyes turned cold and he coldly snorted, "Who do you think you are? You want to order us around? Don't pay attention to this person. Senior Shenzhen, Shangjuan, will follow the original plan and take turns fighting them one by one." Hearing this, Zhuowen frowned. He could hear that Ancestor Lu's words were directed at him, but he and Ancestor Lu had never met before. Ancestor Lu, we should follow this person's advice. I also feel that the gatekeeper's strength will not decline because of us taking turns fighting them one by one. Once the gatekeeper's strength does not decline, we will be defeated in an instant. Yarou Shangjuan said. Ancestor Lu saw that Yarou Shangjuan actually spoke for the white-clothed youth and his eyes spat fire. He coldly said, "You believe in the fallacy of an unrelated person? Ignorant fool, if you agree with that person, you can leave." Yarou Shangjuan was so angry that her chest violently rose and fell. She didn't expect Ancestor Lu to be so narrow-minded. Just because she leaned toward Zhuowen, Ancestor Lu became so angry. However, she had already made an oath before. This time, she must help Ancestor Lu. If she left now, wouldn't she violate the oath? Senior Shenzhen, I'll go first. Ancestor Lu cupped his fists to Shenzhen and ignored Yarou Shangjuan. He took a step forward and the space-time law in his hands shot out like the sharpest silk towards the gatekeeper. The gatekeeper growled and blasted the long sword in his hand towards Ancestor Lu without hesitation. Boom, boom, boom. Suddenly, Ancestor Lu and the gatekeeper were evenly matched. The expected one-sided battle did not occur at all. Ancestor Lu sighed lightly and could not help sneering and ridiculing. Someone's fallacy is really ridiculous. You have no shame to make such a fallacy. Zhuowen watched all this silently and frowned. He acted as if he did not hear Ancestor Lu's ridicule. Haha, it's really a fallacy. The purpose of you saying that just now, is it because you don't want us to pass the third level? Or, are you a spy? The chubby cultivator hurriedly ridiculed, but as soon as he finished speaking, he felt a pain in his chest and spat out a mouthful of blood. He slammed into the ground not far away. You're very noisy. You're like a fly, buzzing around my ear non-stop. Zhuowen slowly withdrew his fist and did not even look at the chubby cultivator. He stared at the gatekeeper again, feeling that this gatekeeper was a little strange. Chapter 2341. Leave it to Zhuowen couldn't be bothered to pay attention to these people. He wasn't Ancestor Lu and didn't need their love or support. His goal was simple, to pass the third checkpoint and obtain the spacetime key. Not long after, Ancestor Lu retreated and glanced at Yarou Shengjuan. The latter frowned slightly and nodded. Holding the spacetime key, she stepped into the air and rushed towards the gatekeeper. Boom, boom, boom. The sounds of battle were endless. Yarou Shengjuan retreated half an hour later, her forehead covered in sweat. Sun Jian rushed out with the horsetail whisk in his hand and replaced Yarou Shengjuan's position, fighting the gatekeeper. Just like that, Ancestor Lu, Sun Jian, and Yarou Shengjuan took turns to fight the gatekeeper, hoping to make the gatekeeper slack off and tire out, causing its battle strength to decrease. The reality was just as the three of them expected. After fighting for a day and a night, the gatekeeper's movements had indeed become sluggish. Ancestor Lu and Sun Jian's eyes lit up. Sun Jian cupped his fists towards Ancestor Lu and said, "Ancestor Lu, I've come to take the gatekeeper's head for you. This gatekeeper can't even withstand a single blow, so there's no need to fear you." As he spoke, Sun Jian quickly approached the gatekeeper. With a shake of the horsetail whisk in his hand, endless white threads turned into a vast ocean and enveloped the gatekeeper. The gatekeeper seemed to be extremely tired. Although it kept struggling, it couldn't break free from the white threads. Instead, the white threads became tighter and tighter. The smile on Sun Jian's face grew wider. Then, he put away the horsetail whisk and the white threads condensed into an oval shape. He turned around and slowly walked towards Ancestor Lu. This was an inescapable net that Sun Jian had set up. In Sun Jian's opinion, the gatekeeper couldn't break free. Ancestor Lu laughed. Just as he was about to go up and greet Sun Jian, his body suddenly stiffened and he stared at Sun Jian. The oval-shaped sphere condensed from the white threads behind Sun Jian was smashed to pieces, and the gatekeeper rushed out. At this moment, the guardian's form was different from before. A pair of black wings grew out of the guardian's back. The black feathers looked like they were made of steel. It was extremely strange. With these wings, the guardian's speed was much faster than before. In addition, Sun Jian was not on guard, so the guardian instantly got behind Sun Jian. By the time Sun Jian reacted, the guardian's sword had already pierced through Sun Jian's back. Blood gushed out like a fountain. Sun Jian was not an ordinary person. His heart was penetrated, and his divine soul was locked down by this guardian. He knew that it would be hard for him to escape, so he took out the illusory heavenly bridge and detonated it without hesitation. The moment the illusory sky bridge exploded, Ancestor Lu finally reacted. Fear rose in his heart. The speed and strength displayed by the guardian just now were much, much stronger than before. Especially the aura that was emitted, it actually pressured him to the point where he could not breathe. Ancestor Lu had a feeling that if he were to face the current guardian, he would definitely die. Go. I have to go now. Otherwise, I'll die here. Ancestor Lu roared in his heart. Without hesitation, he took out an escape talisman and crushed it. He turned into a ray of bloody light and disappeared on the spot. He directly rushed towards the end of the platform. "Do you think you can escape?" A majestic voice rang out from the explosion of the void bridge, and then a huge hand that blotted out the sky suddenly reached out from the energy and grabbed at the bloody light. The giant hand was too big, and its speed was too fast. In an instant, the fleeing bloody light was caught by the giant hand. Ancestor Lu's expression changed greatly. This escape talisman was a top-grade escape talisman of the Lu Shrine. It was unbelievable that the giant hand had caught up with him in an instant. Damn it! Ancestor Lu's eyes were red. He absolutely could not die here. He had to pass through this checkpoint, obtain the spacetime key, and leave this place. Thinking of this, Ancestor Lu's entire body exploded into a bloody mist. This was not crushed by the giant hand, but by Ancestor Lu's own self-destruction. At the moment of Ancestor Lu's self-destruction, a physical body rapidly condensed 1,000 miles away. It was Ancestor Lu. As soon as Ancestor Lu formed, he immediately took out another escape talisman and desperately tried to escape. Unfortunately, the giant hand did not give him a chance and caught him again. However, Ancestor Lu used the same method again. After 10 times in a row, Ancestor Lu's face was pale and he was extremely weak. However, he finally escaped the pursuit of the giant hand and left the platform. Obviously, he had passed through this checkpoint. Of course, although Ancestor Lu had passed, he had paid a great price. At the very least, Ancestor Lu's strength had decreased greatly. It would not be easy for him to recover. "Humph! You're running pretty fast." A cold snort suddenly sounded. Then, the energy of the illusory heavenly bridge's self-destruction was instantly annihilated by another more powerful energy. Then, the Guardian's figure appeared again. At this moment, Yarou Shengjuan had already landed beside Zhuoan. Her beautiful eyes stared at the Guardian with a dignified and fearful expression. What's going on with this Guardian? How did he become so strong? He's even much stronger than before. Yarou Shengjuan was puzzled. Because this is the true form of this Guardian. This guy is using your strength to break through. Zhuoan's eyes were sharp as he said calmly. Break through? Yarou Shengjuan's eyes narrowed as she asked in surprise. That's right. Although the Guardians have strange appearances, they are also cultivating at all times. The Guardian of the third stage is definitely much stronger than the Guardians of the previous 2 stages. Previously, he simply treated you all as training stones, using pressure to complete the final breakthrough. Zhuoan sighed in his heart. He had noticed that something was wrong from the beginning. The strength displayed by the Guardian of the third checkpoint was only a little stronger than Sam's. Based on Zhuowen's understanding of this stage, the Guardian would only get stronger and stronger. Moreover, the Guardian of the later stage would be much stronger than the previous stage, not just by a little bit. Then what should we do now? Yarou Shengjuan was somewhat at a loss. Her beautiful eyes couldn't help but look at the young man in white beside her, hoping that the young man in white could make a decision. The rest of the people were even more panicked. They were so scared that their faces turned pale. They didn't expect that the Guardian had been pretending to be a pig to eat a tiger. Shunjian was dead, Lu Zhu had escaped. Now, the only person they could rely on was Yarou Shengjuan. But everyone knew that Yarou Shengjuan's strength was weaker than Lu Zhu and Shunjian. How could she be a match for the Guardian who suddenly erupted with strength? Zhuowen shrugged and said, "Leave this fellow to me to deal with. You step back and stay with everyone." As soon as these words came out, Yarou Shengjuan was stunned. Everyone behind her was also stunned. Although Zhuowen had a good performance when dealing with the yin wind before, in everyone's view, there was still a big gap between him and Lu Zhu and Shunjian. Chapter 2342. Kill Zhuowen, Ancestor Lu and Shunjian are no match for this Guardian. We should leave first. Yarou Shengjuan said in a panic. Miss Yao, it's too late to retreat now, this Guardian is very smart. As Zhuowen spoke, his eyes intentionally or unintentionally looked at the edge of the platform behind him. At the edge of the platform behind Zhuowen, endless yin winds appeared, completely sealing the entrance of the platform. Yin winds were extremely difficult to deal with, and the amount of yin winds that appeared at the edge of the platform was too much. Even Zhuowen had to go through a lot of trouble to deal with it, not to mention the people behind him who were not very strong. It's over, we're dead for sure this time. Ancestor Lu is too hateful, he actually abandoned us. Sigh, it's too late to say anything, we can't leave. For a time, the surrounding people were filled with sighs and despair. As for Zhuowen's words, no one cared. Ancestor Lu, Shen Jian, and Yarou Xiangjuan were not a match for this guardian even when they joined forces. This white-clothed youth standing out at this moment was just courting death. Yarou Xiangjuan sighed softly and said, I'll join forces with you. Since we can't leave, let's fight to the death together. Zhuowen turned his head and looked at Yarou Xiangjuan with a smile. Miss Yarou, we won't die, the one who will die is this guardian, you, step back. As he spoke, Zhuowen suddenly pulled out the king's sword, took a step forward, and shot out like a stream of light. After the baptism of the second island, Zhuowen's grasp of the space-time law's power had become much stronger. Facing this guardian, although Zhuowen was afraid, it was not to the extent that he would give up without a fight. Yarou Xiangjuan stared blankly at the departing figure. At this moment, that figure seemed much taller in her eyes, and the words of Zhuowen before he left kept echoing in her mind. Overestimating yourself. With a sword in his right hand and a shield in his left, the guardian's eyes revealed a touch of disdain as he casually slashed out with his sword. In the guardian's view, except for Ancestor Lu, Shen Jian, and Yarou Xiangjuan, who could control spacetime, no one here was worthy of his attention. Zhuowen's eyes flashed. It was good that the guardian looked down on him. The moment the guardian's casual sword chi blasted out, Zhuowen's torch dragon wings immediately burst out from his back, and the spacetime law erupted from his body. Suddenly, he seemed to traverse spacetime and disappeared on the spot. When Zhuowen appeared again, he was already in front of the guardian. Then, Zhuowen immediately used the last move of the destruction sword principle, Big Bang technique. Instantly, with Zhuowen as the center, dense invisible ripples spread out, and then the space distorted and collapsed. The gatekeeper looked down on Zhuowen too much, not putting Zhuowen in his eyes at all. At this moment, the creation heaven cleaving earth enveloped his entire body. Even if he tried to resist, it was already too late. His entire body was bound by the spatial energy that was distorting and collapsing. If it wasn't for the fact that this guardian was too strong, this move of Big Bang would have been enough to tear him to pieces. Boom! In the instant that the guardian was bound, Zhuowen was still above the guardian's head. Without any warning, his right foot smashed into the guardian's chest. The guardian was caught off guard and was directly hit by the foot. Then, his entire body seemed to fall apart as he fell from the sky and smashed onto the ground. At this moment, the scene was terrifyingly quiet. Other than Xiao Lang and a few others who already knew of Zhuowen's strength, the rest were dumbfounded. This guy is so strong. He seems to be stronger than Ancestor Lu and the rest. Ancestor Lu and the rest can make the guardian so miserable, but this person did it. After a moment of silence, the crowd erupted into an uproar like a stormy sea. The despair in everyone's eyes rekindled with the flames of hope. Damn it! I want you dead. The guardian stood up from the bottom of the pit and stared at the white-clothed youth above. He stomped his right foot and rushed over like an arrow leaving the bow. Zhuowen looked at the gatekeeper indifferently. With a wave of his sleeve, he extended his right hand into the air. When the gatekeeper was only a dozen meters away from Zhuowen's right hand quickly pointed out. In an instant, a terrifying energy ripple erupted. The guardian's body froze for a moment. Then, he realized that the space around him had turned into an endless ocean. There was no end to it. Fear rose in the guardian's heart for no reason. He could feel the smell of death from this vast ocean. Then, at the end of the endless sea, the gatekeeper saw a slowly rising sun. The setting sun, which was supposed to be setting in the west, was now rising from the horizon. It was so strange. When the sun gradually rose, the guardian felt a terrifying power of the space-time rules spread throughout his body. Then, his body began to explode, as if there were countless small bombs hidden in his body. When the crowd at the edge of the platform saw the rising sun, everyone's eyes were filled with awe and respect. This is definitely a space-time law ability. Xiaolang, why didn't you tell me that Brother Zhuo actually has a space-time law ability? Tang Ruqing's beautiful eyes narrowed. She stared at the rising sun and couldn't help but ask Xiaolang and the other two beside her. Xiaolang smiled bitterly. Ruqing, you didn't ask. Otherwise, I would have told you long ago. And Brother Zhuo's space-time law ability is even more powerful than the one in the second trial. Yarou Xiangjuan was also extremely shocked. She looked at the rising sun with a complicated expression, as well as the slender figure illuminated by its afterglow. She smiled bitterly and said, "Every time I see Brother Zhuo, I find that his strength is even stronger than before. His progress is just too fast." As the sun rose, bloody mists continued to erupt from the Guardian's body. The terrifying space-time power circulated in the Guardian's body, causing the Guardian's injuries to become more and more terrifying and serious. In the end, the Guardian's entire body exploded into several pieces, and bloody mists filled the sky. "Little brat, you really hid it well. I'm really unwilling to accept this." The Guardian's unwilling voice rang out again, but it soon stopped abruptly as the sun gradually disappeared. Zhuo Wen slowly landed on the ground and knelt on one knee. He was panting, and his face was slightly pale. The power of the ocean's waning sun had indeed increased, but the corresponding consumption was also greater. At this moment, Zhuo Wen seemed to have been squeezed dry. His whole body was powerless and limp on the ground. "Although I created this ability myself, it's a pity that my cultivation level is still too low. The burden of using this ability is too heavy for me." Zhuo Wen shook his head and immediately took out a praying mat. After laying down restrictions around it, he began to recuperate and recover his energy. Space-time law abilities were generally used by cultivators of the Void Sky 9th step. It wasn't strenuous and could be used however they wanted. However, Zhuo Wen was only at the Void Sky 7th step. The gap between him and a Void Sky 9th step was not small. Using the space-time law ability was indeed too strenuous. Chapter 2343. Island of Bones. The moment Zhuowen finished off the gatekeeper, everyone behind him fell into a daze. After a long while, one of them said as if he was sleep-talking, "The gatekeeper has been taken care of. Can we go to the third island? We won. We can leave this place. Let's go. Let's hurry to the third island. Who knows, there might be something good there." The cheers were endless. Then, the cultivators rushed to the other side of the platform. Many of the cultivators turned a blind eye to Zhuowen when they passed by him. They didn't even say a word of thanks. Yarou Xiangjuan, Tang Ruqing, and Xiaolang couldn't stand it anymore and scolded the cultivators. Unfortunately, no one listened to their scolding. They all rushed to the end of the platform like crazy. It was as if they would miss some treasure if they were late. Soon, only Yarou Xiangjuan, Tang Ruqing, Xiaolang, Xiao Yin, and Xiao Fu were left on the platform, along with Zhuowen, who was sitting cross-legged and recuperating. These people are too hateful. If it wasn't for Brother Zhuo, how could they have passed the third checkpoint? They didn't even say a word of thanks, Tang Ruqing said with extreme displeasure. Xiao Lang, Xiao Yin, and Xiao Fu were also filled with righteous indignation. Among them, Xiao Lang said, "If I had known, Brother Zhuo wouldn't have killed the gatekeeper. He could have left by himself. Zhuowen wouldn't do that. I know his character. The reason he killed the gatekeeper wasn't for everyone on the island. He did it for his friends, which is you." Yarou Xiangjuan sighed. Hearing this, Tang Ruqing, Xiao Lang, and Xiao Lang came to a realization. Then, they looked at Zhuowen with eyes full of gratitude. After Yarou Xiangjuan's explanation, they finally understood that Zhuowen had stayed behind to kill the gatekeeper for them and not for those ungrateful people. "Miss Yao, you seem to know Brother Zhuo very well. Could it be that you are his partner?" Tang Ruqing suddenly said in a teasing tone. Xiao Lang and his two brothers also looked at Yarou Xiangjuan meaningfully. Whether it was Tang Ruqing, Xiao Lang, or the other two, they all deeply felt Yarou Xiangjuan's peerless beauty. As the saying went, a beauty matched a hero. In their eyes, Zhuo Wen and Yarou Xiangjuan were a match made in heaven. Yarrow Xiangjuan was first stunned, and then her pretty face flushed red as she said, "You've misunderstood. I'm not Brother Zhuo's Dao companion, I'm only his friend." "I see. I was rude." "Miss Yao, please don't take offense," Tang Ruqing said with a red face. For a moment, the five of them fell into silence. However, the silence between the five was quickly broken by Zhuowen. With a wave of his sleeve, Zhuowen withdrew the restrictions around him and slowly stood up. "Brother Zhuo, are you all right? Your space-time divine ability is very powerful, but the burden on you is not small, right?" Xiao Lang came before Zhuowen and asked with concern. Xiao Lang had guessed that Zhuowen would be extremely weak after using the waning sun of the sea several times. He would need to recover on the spot. "Yes, you don't have to worry about this. Let's go to the third island." After Zhuowen finished speaking, he turned around and walked to the other side of the platform. Xiao Lang and the others quickly followed. However, Yarrow Xiangjuan gritted her teeth. She saw that Zhuowen still did not take the initiative to talk to her, which made her a little annoyed. However, when she remembered that she was now a woman, she also knew that she did not have much interaction with Zhuowen. Even if she faced Zhuowen, she seemed to have nothing to say. On the other side of the platform, there was a flight of stairs leading down. The six of them walked for 2 hours and finally arrived at the end of the stairs. It was still an island, but it was not an ordinary island. It was an island piled with piles of bones. If one looked carefully, the base of the island was actually the skeleton of a huge beast floating on the sea. At a glance, the bones on the island were of humans, beasts, and even unknown species. At least, just by looking at the bones alone, Zhuowen could not help but wonder what species it was. Is this the third island? What does this island have to do with the exit? Tang Ruqing frowned slightly. Zhuowen was also quite puzzled. He immediately turned to look at Yarrow Xiangjuan and said, "Miss Yao, do you know anything about this place?" The reason why Zhuowen asked Yarrow Xiangjuan was mainly because Yarrow Xiangjuan came from the Six Desires Palace. She must have investigated this place in advance. Unexpectedly, Yarrow Xiangjuan shook her head blankly and said with a wry smile, "I entered the Spacetime Quicksand River mainly for the Spacetime Core. It was also the first time I knew that there was something like the Spacetime Key here, so," Zhuowen nodded. It seemed that Yarrow Xiangjuan did not know how to obtain the Spacetime Key here. "I wonder where Ancestor Lu and those who entered this island before are now?" Xiao Lang suddenly asked. Zhuowen's eyes flickered as his divine sense suddenly shot out. However, at the instant his divine sense shot out, a terrifying roar that shook the heavens and the earth resounded in his mind. This roar carried an astonishing tearing force. His sea of consciousness almost collapsed under this roar. Zhuowen took a deep breath and hurriedly withdrew his divine sense. His face was pale and blood flowed from the corner of his mouth. Zhuowen's abnormal state immediately attracted the attention of Yarrow Xiangjuan and the others. "Brother Zhuo, what's the matter?" Yarrow Xiangjuan asked nervously. Zhuowen wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth and waved his hand to indicate that he was fine. He said, "I just extended my divine sense to explore this island, but it was obstructed. This island is completely different from the previous 2 islands. I feel that this island is filled with a violent aura. We must be careful," Yarrow Xiangjuan said solemnly. Tang Ruqing and the others also nodded. Not only Yarrow Xiangjuan, but they also felt that something was wrong with this island. As for what exactly was wrong, they could not tell. Let's go to the center of the island," Zhuowen said. The others nodded without any objections and followed Zhuowen. They knew that Zhuowen's purpose for going to the center of the island should be for the reward of the 3rd level. There was still a stone pillar in the center of the island, but this stone pillar was somewhat different from the previous 2 islands. This stone pillar was made of bones mixed with stone. The moment they arrived at the center of the island, the 6 of them stopped and looked at the scene in the center of the island. Around the bone pillar in the center of the island, there were corpses that had not yet turned cold. Zhuowen looked carefully and found that these corpses were all the cultivators that followed from the 2nd island. Zhuowen even saw an acquaintance among these corpses. And this acquaintance was none other than the slightly fat cultivator. The slightly fat cultivator lay not far from the bone pillar, his eyes full of fear. On the chest of the slightly fat cultivator, a fist-sized wound had exploded. At this moment, the wound was still bleeding strangely. The other people's deaths were not much different from this slightly fat cultivator. Basically, their chests were opened with fist-sized wounds, and the wounds were bleeding black blood. Chapter 2344. Lightning-winged Tao Tiejuan did not see Lu Zhu among the corpses. What's going on? What happened here? Tang Ruqing shuddered when he saw the miserable corpses around the bone pillars. The Xiao brothers did not look too good either. Zhuowen took a deep breath and became even more vigilant. He felt that this island was extremely strange. Especially when his gaze fell on the bone pillar in front of him, he felt a dense chill, as if he was being stared at by a venomous snake that was secretly hunting for its prey. This is the soul-devouring island. Do not touch the bone pillar on the soul-devouring island. This bone pillar is not a reward, it will bring you death. A low voice sounded in Zhuowen's mind. The tone was full of warning. Zhuowen's eyes moved. He was not unfamiliar with this voice because the owner of this voice was the mysterious head. Zhuowen heaved a sigh of relief. It seemed that the mysterious head had been paying attention to his trial all this time. However, he also knew that the mysterious head had something to ask of him. It definitely did not want him to die here. After all, he knew the location of the mysterious head's left eye and heart. This fellow still needed him to obtain the left eye and heart. How could it watch him die in this trial? Senior, what should I do? This mysterious head had stayed here for so long. It definitely knew how to obtain the spacetime key. When Zhuowen's words left his mouth, the voice fell silent. After a long time, the voice sounded again. The spacetime key is guarded by that fellow. If you want to obtain the spacetime key, you have to go deep into that fellow's lair. However, your strength is far from enough. Even if you have comprehended the spacetime superpower, it is still not enough. The mysterious head sounded helpless. Who is the fellow you are talking about? Zhuowen asked. The master of the Bone Island. This island is that fellow's feeding ground. Its name is the lightning-winged Dao Tai. It has a huge appetite and can swallow anything. It is one of the 4 great ferocious beasts that the spacetime master has reared. It is extremely difficult to deal with. The mysterious head said helplessly. Zhuowen knew that the mysterious head of the spacetime master was probably the master of the spacetime temple. However, he found it strange that the spacetime master was actually raising 4 ferocious beasts. Moreover, from the tone of the mysterious head, it seemed that the 4 great beasts were not to be trifled with. How strong is the Thunderwing Dao Tai? Zhuowen asked in a deep voice. The mysterious head said indifferently, the master of time and space's 4 great beasts are famous for their fighting prowess. Each of them is no weaker than an ordinary Dao-confirming powerhouse. However, most of their power has been sealed by the master of time and space. Their strength is probably around the Void Sky 9th Ascension realm. Zhuowen sucked in a breath of cold air. He hadn't expected the 4 fierce beasts to be so terrifying. Each of them was no weaker than an ordinary Dao-confirming powerhouse. Zhuowen knew that the strength of a Dao corroboration expert was above the Void Sky 9 steps, and their strength was extremely terrifying. Zhuowen couldn't even compare to a Void Sky 9 steps cultivator, let alone a Dao corroboration expert. What made Zhuowen feel even more bitter was that although the Thunderwing Dao Tai had most of its power sealed by the spacetime master, its strength was still at the Void Sky 9 steps enlightenment realm. Its strength might not be much different from Mu Chenshue's. Although Zhuowen's strength was much stronger than before, he knew very well that he was still far from being a match for a Void Sky 9 steps cultivator if he encountered one again. Since the Thunderwing Dao Tai had the strength of a life-enlightening realm expert, Zhuowen could only run away if he encountered the Thunderwing Dao Tai. I advise you not to force yourself. Now that the Thunderwing Dao Tai is not here, I can still use a divine ability to teleport you away. Otherwise, everything will be too late. The mysterious head began to persuade Zhuowen. Senior, Please tell me where the Thunderwing Taoche's lair is and where the spacetime key is in the Thunderwing Taoche's lair? Zhuowen asked. The mysterious head's voice faltered. Apparently, it was surprised that Zhuowen was overestimating himself. He knew how terrifying the Thunderwing Daotai was, but he still wanted to take the risk. Do you know the consequences of encountering the Thunderwing Daotai? Your waning sun above the sea divine ability is not very useful against the Thunderwing Daotai. You are digging your own grave. The mysterious head's tone was a little agitated and even had a faint impulse to curse. Senior, I know this, but I said that I must get the spacetime key. If you don't want to tell me, I will find it myself, Zhuowen said lightly. The mysterious head was completely helpless against Zhuowen. It snorted and said, "Take care of yourself. This is the location of the Thunderwing Taoche's lair and the spacetime key. When you die, don't blame me for not warning you." After the mysterious head transmitted the location information to Zhuowen, it didn't say a word. It was completely silent. Zhuowen, on the other hand, was pleasantly surprised to see the additional information in his mind. He checked the information briefly and finally found out that the Thunderwing Taoche's lair was actually in the depths of the sea below the Bone Island. The information also mentioned how to get to the bottom of the sea below the Bone Island. The information even indicated that the Thunderwing Daotai came out to look for food at midnight and early in the morning. Brother Zhuo, let's go to the Bone Pillar now and see what the reward is. After discovering that there was nothing unusual except for the corpses around, Xiao Lang and the others became bolder. Among them, Xiao Lang couldn't wait to go forward and put his palm on the bone pillar. Zhuowen took the lead and intercepted Xiao Lang. Then, he threw Xiao Lang to the back. Xiao Lang got up awkwardly and looked at Zhuowen in confusion. Zhuowen said in a low voice, "If you really put your palm on the bone pillar, you will die." In the information given by the mysterious head, it specifically mentioned that they must never touch the bone pillar in the center of the island. Because once the bone pillar was touched, it would immediately awaken the Thunderwing Daotai in the depths of the island. At that time, it could lead to a disaster. Zhuowen pointed at the corpses around them and said, "I'm guessing that these people became like this because they touched the bone pillars. It's best that we be more careful." Xiao Lang and the others were puzzled. Xiao Lang's eyes were filled with guilt. He really didn't think it through. The corpses were piled up, but he still did something stupid. "Let's find a place to use as a cave residence first." After saying that, Zhuowen led the group to stroll around the island. Then, they found a bone cave in a rather remote place. Zhuowen laid down layers of restrictions in the bone cave and set up an extremely concealed concealment array at the entrance of the cave. Only then did he stop. "I may have to go out for a while. Before I come back or send you a message, you must not leave the cave residence." After saying that, Zhuowen left the cave residence. Chapter 23:45. Luring the tiger away from the mountain. After Zhuowen left the cave, he waved his sleeve and summoned the black-clothed Zhuowen. "Go to the center of the island." Zhuowen ordered the black-clothed Zhuowen and went to the edge of the island. He looked at the gray, cold seawater outside, took a deep breath, and plunged into the sea. What hit him in the face was endless coldness. It was not the usual coldness, but the coldness of time. If an ordinary cultivator entered the sea, he would be frozen on the spot by the spacetime rules of order. However, Zhuowen was different. He had mastered the spacetime rules of order, so the seawater did not affect him much. Zhuowen continued to dive into the sea. The deeper he went, the stronger the coldness was. When Zhuowen entered the sea, he found that there was a bone pillar at the bottom of the island. It extended to the bottom of the sea. Zhuowen followed the bone pillar and dived down. After about 4 hours, he finally reached the end of the bone pillar, which was the bottom of the sea. There, an extremely large beast was lying on the ground with its eyes closed, as if it was sleeping soundly. The beast had the body of a goat and the face of a human. Its eyes were under its armpits, and it had the teeth of a tiger and the claws of a human. It had a big head and a big mouth. There were 2 enormous lightning wings on the beast's body. From afar, Zhuowen could see the lightning radiance emitting from the surface of the lightning wings. Especially the aura emanating from this beast. Even though Zhuowen was far away, he could still feel fear. Zhuowen knew that it should be the Thunderwing Daotai that the mysterious head had mentioned. The Thunderwing Daotai was indeed one of the 4 great fierce beasts. Its aura alone made Zhuowen tremble with fear. It was not the first time that Zhuowen had seen a Daotai. When he was in the Heavenly Armor continent, the Mount of the Chaos Temple's Master God was a Daotai. However, the Daotai bloodline of the Master God was not pure. Compared to the Thunderwing Daotai in front of him, the difference was like heaven and earth. Moreover, the Thunderwing Daotai had a pair of unique lightning wings. Obviously, the Thunderwing Daotai was a mutated fierce beast. Generally speaking, mutated fierce beasts were much more powerful than ordinary fierce beasts. Zhuowen was hiding in the distance. He did not act rashly. Instead, he carefully observed the environment around the Thunderwing Daotai. Suddenly, Zhuowen's eyes fell on the end of the bone pillar under the Thunderwing Taotia's chest. There was a green crystal at the end of the bone. This crystal was emitting an extremely rich life essence. Sensing the life origin from the crystal, the life Zhuowen Daotai, the necklace Daotai, Yarrow translation the crystal the life origin was life origin and the life origin was life death and life translation. However, the life force contained in the crystals embedded in the bone pillar far surpassed that of the necklace Yarrow Shangjuan had given her. Recalling that the necklace that Yarrow Shangjuan had given him had saved his life several times, his eyes suddenly blazed. If he could get the crystal that was filled with life origin, he would definitely be rich. At the end of the bone pillar, Zhuowen Daotai noticed a stone platform that was half the height of a human. On the surface of the stone platform, there were dense green light locks. Inside the light locks, there was a black key floating. The moment Zhuowen Daotai saw the black key, he was shocked. He was too familiar with the black key. Wasn't it the space-time key that he was looking for? The space-time key is really here, Zhuowen Daotai murmured to himself excitedly, but he calmed down very quickly. He looked at the Thunderwing Daotai, whose eyelids were still drooping, as if it was in a deep sleep. However, he did not relax or lose his composure after seeing the space-time key. He knew that in order to get the space-time key, he had to lure the Thunderwing Daotai away. Otherwise, the space-time key could only be seen but not touched. At that moment, in front of the bone pillar in the middle of the bone island, Zhuowen Daotai stood with his hands behind his back. He squinted his eyes and clenched his right hand into a fist, slamming it on the bone pillar in front of him. Immediately, a huge force erupted from the black-clothed Zhuowen's fist. Afterwards, the bone pillar began to shake violently, and the entire island began to shake as well. Yarrow Shangjuan Daotai and the others, who were hiding in the cave residence at the edge of the island, were shocked and unsettled. After Zhuowen Taotia's punch, he did not stop. Instead, he punched the bone pillar again and again. For a moment, the frequency of the shaking of the entire island became even more terrifying. The explosion was like a muffled thunder. At the bottom of the sea, the Thunderwing Daotai, whose eyelids were drooping, suddenly opened its lantern-like eyes. In the depths of its pupils, there was a bloodthirsty rage. Whoosh! The Thunderwing Daotai spread out a pair of thunder wings. Countless thunderbolts were like countless angry dragons, spreading in all directions. Then, the Thunderwing Daotai swept toward the surface of the sea like a gust of wind. In an instant, it disappeared into the bottom of the sea. So fast. Zhuowen Daotai looked at the remaining thunderbolts on the bottom of the sea in horror. The Thunderwing Taotia's speed was beyond Zhuowen Taotia's expectation. It was even faster than teleportation. I have to get the space-time key quickly. The Thunderwing Daotai is so fast that Zhuowen Daotai won't be able to escape for long. Zhuowen Daotai realized the urgency of the situation and immediately went to the place where the Thunderwing Daotai had been. The remaining thunderbolts had not completely dissipated. When Zhuowen Daotai entered the place, he could clearly feel the numbness of the thunderbolts passing through his body. It was not a good feeling. Zhuowen Daotai quickly walked to the front of the stone platform and looked at the countless light locks on the surface of the space-time key. His eyes were extremely solemn. The light locks were not simple. The way they were wrapped implied the rules of spacetime. Zhuo and Daotai also noticed that the energy of the light locks came from the green crystal inlaid at the end of the bone pillar. The surge of energy in the green crystal was definitely something Zhuo and Daotai had never seen before. If he were to attack the light locks recklessly, he did not know how long it would take for him to break them. If he wanted to break the light lock, he would have to suppress the energy source of the light lock. Thinking of this, Zhuo and Daotai reached out his right hand and grabbed the green crystal. But soon, Zhuo and Daotai was blasted away by a powerful energy. He could not help but retreat. Zhuo and Daotai looked at the green crystal inlaid on the bone pillar in horror and frowned. He knew that there was a powerful restriction on the surface of the crystal. With Zhuo and Taotie's level, he could tell at a glance that the restriction was definitely set up by a powerful array master. If he wanted to break it, it would be impossible without a few days. But Zhuo and Daotai did not have that much time to waste. "Kid, let me tell you something. You have to break the formation eye on the surface of the life crystal as soon as possible. The Thunderwing Daotai is too fast. I'm afraid it will come back soon. By then, you won't be able to leave." The mysterious head's voice rang in Zhuo and Taotie's mind again. Zhuo and Daotai was delighted. He did not have time to thank the mysterious head before he received all the information. After a while, Zhuo and Daotai opened his eyes. Then, he made a gesture with his right hand and pointed at the surface of the green crystal. Then, the formation eye on the surface of the restriction appeared. Zhuo and Daotai waved his right hand and immediately took out the beast bone array disc. He began to break the formation eye on the restriction. While Zhuoan was breaking the formation, the Thunderwing Daotai had already leaped out of the water. It stared at the black figure in the center of the island with fire in its eyes. Chapter 2346. Obtaining the spacetime key. The black-clad Zhuoan's expression changed slightly. He snorted coldly when he saw the terrifying lightning. With a flip of his right hand, he summoned the phagocytosis. After Zhuoan's true body left, he gave the phagocytosis to the black-clad Zhuoan. The phagocytosis was King Devourer's most precious treasure, so it was much more powerful in the black-clad Zhuoan's hands than in his true body's. The phagocytosis expanded to 300 meters in size when it was summoned by the black-clad Zhuoan. It stood in front of the black-clad Zhuoan, completely blocking the terrifying lightning. Ever since the phagocytosis was fused with the second Dao fruit, the heavenly Dao rhymes within it had become even more powerful, and the power of the phagocytosis had also been greatly enhanced. The current phagocytosis's power had actually surpassed the sub-heaven-breaking divine artifact, and was close to the level of a Dao verification divine artifact. Zhuoan knew that if he fused the remaining 2 Dao fruits into the phagocytosis would reach the level of a Dao verification divine artifact. However, he also knew that if he wanted to fuse the remaining 2 Dao fruits with the phagocytosis, he would have to unlock more restrictions. The Thunderwing Taotie's lantern-sized eyes stared coldly at the black-clad Zhuoan. Seeing that its attack had no effect, the anger in its eyes grew even more intense. Rumble. The Thunderwing Daotai roared. Its thunderous wings unfurled and folded, then it disappeared like a bolt of lightning. When the Thunderwing Daotai appeared again, it was already above the black-clothed Zhuoan. The Thunderwing Daotai opened its mouth and spat out a huge thunderball. The thunderball was unusual. Its surface was blazing lightning, but its interior was transparent like a glass ball. It wasn't an ordinary thunderball. Inside the thunderball was the terrifying law of spacetime. The black-robed Zhuoan could even see that when the thunderball was spat out by the lightning-winged Daotai, the surrounding space and time seemed to have stopped. Only the thunderball was moving forward slowly. As the lightning ball approached, the black-clothed Zhuoan realized that the time and space around him had completely stopped. The powerful binding force produced by spacetime stagnation bound the black-clothed Zhuoan. It was as if an invisible hand was holding the black-clothed Zhuoan in its hand. The black-clothed Zhuoan's forehead was covered in cold sweat. He had a feeling that if he was hit by this lightning ball, he would definitely die. The fear of death invaded his mind, causing him to roar at the sky. Rumble. Countless beams of golden light burst out from the black-clad Zhuowen's body. Next, the black-clad Zhuowen's clothes were torn apart and his body expanded, revealing the true body of Devourer King. Roar. Devourer King's pair of golden eyes stared coldly at the lightning-winged Daotai in front of him. With a swipe of its golden claws, the phagocytosis in front of it was blown away. Golden marks burst out from the phagocytosis. Each of the golden marks had the power to destroy the heavens and the earth. As the golden marks blasted out, the binding spacetime around Devourer King was broken. Then, Devourer King grabbed the phagocytosis with its claw. Its right hoof stepped on the air and disappeared like a gust of wind, plunging into the depths of the sea behind it. The moment Devourer King left, the mighty golden marks were completely destroyed by the thunderball. The lightning-winged Taotiez's ferocious eyes glowed. It felt a surge of power from Devourer King that made it excited. For countless years, only the other three ferocious beasts under its master could give it this kind of feeling. But now, it felt this kind of excitement from another exotic beast. How could it let go of this opportunity? Rumble. Rumble. The lightning-winged Daotai let out a low roar. It spread its thunder wings and instantly disappeared. After the lightning-winged Daotai and Devourer King left the Bone Island, Yarou Xiangjuan, Tang Ruqing, and Xiao Lang, who were hiding in the cave, trembled as they walked out. The aura that the lightning-winged Daotai emitted was too terrifying. It was as if they were ants in front of the lightning-winged Daotai. Who lured that beast away? I have never seen that golden giant beast before, Tang Ruqing said doubtfully. Xiao Lang and the other two shook their heads. Yarou Xiangjuan, on the other hand, frowned slightly. She vaguely felt that the golden giant beast must be related to Zhuowen. But now, Zhuowen seemed to have evaporated into thin air. No one knew where he went, which made Yarou Xiangjuan anxious and worried. While Yarou Xiangjuan and the others were at a loss, in the cold depths of the sea, a white-robed young man was breaking the restriction with a serious look. Phew, looking at the end of the bone pillar that had completely lost the restriction, Zhuowen let out a sigh of relief. His eyes were filled with excitement. Zhuowen held the green crystal in his right hand and pulled it out. Then, he quickly put it into his spiritual ring. Without the energy supply of the green crystal, the green light lock on the surface of the spacetime key immediately dimmed. Zhuowen smashed the green light lock into pieces with a single punch and grabbed the spacetime divine key that was inside it. I finally got the spacetime key. It's really not easy. Zhuowen revealed a relaxed smile. In order to get the spacetime key, he had gone through a lot of hardships. Save me. Just as Zhuowen was about to leave, a weak voice came and caught Zhuowen's attention. The voice came from the place where the lightning-winged Daotai was lying. It was the bottom of the sea. Zhuowen could still see the shape of the lightning-winged Taotiez's body in the mud. In the middle of the mud, there was an object that was wriggling. It was a hand that was constantly groping. Zhuowen's eyes flickered. He took a step forward, grabbed the hand, and pulled it out. It was a clay figurine. Phew, the clay figurine knelt on the ground with its hands on the ground. It kept coughing and looked extremely miserable. Although the clay figurine was covered in mud and it was impossible to see its appearance, Zhuowen was able to guess the person's identity from the shape of the clay figurine. Ancestor Lu. Zhuowen said with a frown. Brother, can you help me? As long as you take me out, Shrine Lu will definitely not mistreat you, Ancestor Lu quickly said in a low voice. Ancestor Lu was actually a little aggrieved. He never expected that the young man in white in front of him not only passed the third level, but also went deep into the lair of the lightning-winged Daotai and obtained the spacetime key and the crystal of life. How did you get in here? The lightning-winged Daotai won't be so kind as to not kill you, right? Zhuowen asked in surprise. Hearing that, Ancestor Lu's eyes flashed with a trace of humiliation. He stammered as if there was something he couldn't say. If you don't say it, I won't do it. You're on your own now. Zhuowen didn't bother with Ancestor Lu. Due to the pressure of the lightning-winged Daotai in the mud, Ancestor Lu was buried in the mud and couldn't break free. Chapter 2347. Poor Ancestor Lu, I'll tell you, as long as you take me away. Ancestor Lu was afraid that Zhuowen would leave, so he immediately told him everything that had happened. After Zhuowen listened, his eyes became strange. He looked Ancestor Lu up and down, and the latter's eyes became even more humiliated. It turned out that after Ancestor Lu passed the 3rd level with serious injuries, he entered the Bone Island. Naturally, he touched the bone pillar in the center of the island, which led to the Thunderwing Daotai. Ancestor Lu happened to have a lot of thunderstones, which were thunder attribute ores. It was a material for refining weapons, and it was also a favorite food of the Thunderwing Daotai. Relying on the thunderstones, Ancestor Lu was not killed by the Thunderwing Daotai. The Thunderwing Daotai kept Ancestor Lu like a toy. Usually, it would press Ancestor Lu into the mud. Once it was bored, it would take Ancestor Lu out and play with him. It would also ask for thunderstones from Ancestor Lu as snacks. Until now, when the Thunderwing Daotai was lured away by Zhuowen, Ancestor Lu was finally found and rescued by Zhuowen. Zhuowen didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Although the Thunderwing Daotai's strength was terrifying, its mind was like that of a 7 or 8-year-old child. It was just a pity for Ancestor Lu. The dignified successor of the Lu Shrine was treated like a toy by a beast. Brother, you must save me. As long as you save me, the Lu Shrine will not mistreat you, Ancestor Lu said hurriedly. Zhuowen didn't know about the so-called Lu Shrine, and he didn't care about the Lu Shrine's things. However, Ancestor Lu had no enmity with him, so it was understandable that he would save him. After all, he wasn't a cold-blooded person. Let's go, Zhuowen said indifferently. He grabbed Ancestor Lu's collar with his right hand and lifted him in a very humiliating posture. Then, he kicked off with his right foot and rushed towards the sea. Ancestor Lu's eyes flashed coldly, but he endured it. After all, compared to his dignity, his life was more important. Splash! After a while, Zhuowen jumped out of the water and landed on the edge of the Bone Island. The sound of water splashing also attracted the attention of Yarou Shangjuan, Tang Ruqing, and the other 4 not far away. The 5 of them immediately became extremely vigilant. However, when they discovered that it was Zhuowen, their expressions immediately relaxed. Brother Zhuo, are you okay? Where did you go? Yarou Shangjuan hurriedly stepped forward, her beautiful eyes focused on Zhuowen, full of concern. She didn't notice that Zhuowen was carrying Ancestor Lu. Ancestor Lu was the first to notice Yarou Shangjuan. Seeing that Yarou Shangjuan didn't notice him and was instead looking at the white-clothed youth with concern, his heart burned with jealousy, but he didn't say anything. Go get something. Wait, I know how to leave this place. I'll open the exit. As he spoke, Zhuowen casually placed Lu Zhu on the ground and rushed towards the center of the island. Seeing Zhuowen's actions, Yarou Shangjuan noticed that Ancestor Lu was being carried by Zhuowen, and asked in surprise, Ancestor Lu? Why are you with Zhuowen? Ancestor Lu forced a smile but didn't say anything. Seeing that Ancestor Lu didn't speak, Yarou Shangjuan ignored him and followed Zhuowen. Tang Ruqing, Xiao Lang, and the other 3 naturally followed closely behind. Soon, only Ancestor Lu was left lying on the ground like a dead dog. Damn it. When I leave this place, I'll definitely teach that bitch a lesson. As for that bastard, he actually dared to have designs on my woman. He even intentionally humiliated me. I will definitely not let him off. Ancestor Lu's eyes were cold, but when he thought of Zhuowen's words about finding the exit, he quickly propped himself up and walked towards the center of the island. Zhuowen stopped in front of the bone pillar and communicated with the mysterious head in his mind. He secretly said, Senior, I've obtained the spacetime key, so I should have completed the trial. Now, tell me how to leave this place. Although you used a trick to obtain the spacetime key, you can still be considered to have completed the trial. How about this, place the life crystal you obtained into the bone pillar, and I'll connect to the exit for you. The mysterious head's voice transmitted into Zhuowen's mind. Zhuowen didn't hesitate. He took out the life crystal and pressed it against the surface of the bone pillar. Suddenly, a green light burst out, illuminating the white bone pillar. Then, Zhuowen noticed that the green on the surface of the life crystal was gradually dimming, and he couldn't help but feel his heart ache. The life crystal contained rich life essence, and it was extremely useful to any cultivator. It could even save a life at a critical moment. Now that the life essence on the life crystal was constantly being depleted, even Zhuowen felt reluctant. When a third of the green on the life crystal's surface disappeared, it finally stopped. Then, Zhuowen discovered that a green door had appeared on the surface of the bone pillar. Is this the exit? Tang Ruqing, Yarou Shangjuan, and the other four revealed expressions of joy the moment they saw the green door on the surface of the bone pillar. They had been trapped here for countless years, and they had never dreamed of being able to leave this place. Now that the opportunity to leave had presented itself in front of them, how could they not be excited? You guys go out first, Zhuowen said to Yarou Shangjuan and the others. Zhuowen, what about you? Why don't you come with us? Yarou Shangjuan looked at Zhuowen in surprise. I still have some matters to attend to. You guys go out first, I'll catch up later, Zhuowen said with a smile. Tang Ruqing, Xiao Lang, and the other three hurriedly cupped their fists to express their gratitude to Zhuowen, and then entered the green door without any reservation. Miss Yao, why don't you go in? Zhuowen looked at Yarou Shangjuan, who still didn't move, and asked with a frown. Yarou Shangjuan's willowy brows furrowed slightly, and she said in a low voice, Brother Zhuo, is there anything else you need to attend to here? I don't think there's anything else. Just as Zhuowen was about to speak, his expression changed slightly. Then, an earth-shattering roar came from afar, piercing through the sky. Just this roar alone contained an extremely terrifying power. Yarou Shangjuan's pretty face turned pale, and blood flowed out from the corner of her mouth and ears. Is it that ferocious beast? Brother Zhuo, come with me quickly. That ferocious beast is too terrifying. It definitely has the strength of the Void Sky 9 steps. You'll definitely die if you stay here, Yarou Shangjuan hurriedly said. However, just as Yarou Shangjuan finished speaking, Zhuowen had already swept in front of her. Then, Zhuowen gently pressed his palm on Yarou Shangjuan's fragrant shoulder. Fart. Yarou Shangjuan groaned and spat out a mouthful of blood. She looked at the white-clothed youth in front of her in disbelief, and then fell into the green door. The moment Yarou Shangjuan entered the green door, she saw with her own eyes that far away from the Bone Island, a giant ferocious beast with a pair of thunderous wings was rapidly approaching. Its target was the white-clothed Zhuowen. At this moment, Zhuowen's back was facing her, and his head was slightly raised. A gentle breeze blew, and his shoulder-length hair fluttered in the wind. He stood stubbornly on the spot, welcoming the incoming giant thunderous beast. This scene eventually froze in Yarou Shangjuan's eyes. Then, she completely disappeared into the green door. Zhuowen sighed softly, looking at the thunderous Daotai in silence. He knew that Devouring King had lost, and he had lost miserably. Fortunately, Devouring King's life aura hadn't disappeared. Apparently, the thunderous Daotai hadn't completely killed his clone. The Devourer King's clone was very important to Zhuowen. He couldn't allow that clone to die in this training ground. You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.